The maids whisper in awe, wondering if they'll really see the marquise again today. One maid praises her golden hair, emerald eyes, perfect uniform, and flawless swordsmanship. She asks if they noticed the marquise's radiant golden magical aura. Another maid wonders why she's more famous than the handsome Duke captain. They spot Marquise Lorelia von Devil, captain of the 2nd Battalion. Seeing her head to the first captain's office again, they assume it's important business. Lorelia enters and asks the captain for a moment, insisting they must talk. She reports another conflict started by his knights and asks if he's listening. Captain Edgar replies, "This is already the 46th report and nothing has changed." Lorelia says his men bully her youngest knight, despite him weighing 2 tons. She snaps that he's just sensitive, and says that's not the main issue. Lorelia warns this is the last time, as such behavior ruins both battalions. She vows to explain it herself, accepts any punishment, and leaves confidently. Lorelia is the only female marquise, and this begins her love story. Father says the Emperor calls Blefor the greatest wizard of the century. Blefor thanks them and asks if Leah has returned yet. Lorelia arrives, apologizing for being late after sparring practice. Father invites her to sit, saying they've just started. Mother shows her letters, revealing they're all marriage proposals. Her brother jokes about her popularity. Lorelia says she likes no one yet. Lorelia says she must choose soon, as Blefor will leave for the tower. Mother gently says there's no need to rush marriage. Father adds she shouldn't hurry with heirs. Blefor jokes about new magic. Parents say they may have more children and will raise them lovingly. Blefor blushes, saying he admires them and dreams of being such a parent. Days later, tragedy strikes, and their parents die. At the cemetery, Lorelia wonders if she was too confident. People whisper it was an accident and fear the family losing its title. Blefor lashes out, but Lorelia calms him to stop gossip. Blefor offers to be heir, but Lorelia says she'll lead instead. Nobles protest, claiming a woman cannot be a marquis. Archduke Jan warns other nations will mock them. Lorelia declares she'll prove her worth by law and strength. Asked how, she says she'll take up the sword like her father. Jan mocks her sword, calling it decoration. Lorelia smiles and warns him not to kneel before jewelry. Prince Kalen jokes her gaze could seduce an archduchess. He proposes a duel, win, and she's worthy. The prince taunts Jan, asking why he fears fighting her. Jan agrees. Lose, and he accepts her. Win, she marries. Jan warns childbirth drains mana, and the empire may lose her magic. The prince notes Duke Fariel is absent and suggests waiting. The emperor dismisses objections and asks Lorelia to decide. She accepts, thanking him for protecting her family. The duel begins, and Lorelia fights the archduke evenly. Jan admits she's strong, but says it's not enough. Her sword shatters and Jan mocks it as mere jewelry. The emperor offers to stop the duel, citing the agreement. Lorelia shouts that the fight has only begun. Jan senses her aura and is shocked she can use it. Magic in the empire is fading, and childbirth erases mana. The empire turns to aura knights, with Lorelia as its jewel. The emperor is stunned to learn a new aura master appeared. He orders respect for Lorelia and confirms her title. After inauguration, she's named among the most worthy aura wielders. 3 years later, Lorelia stops another battalion conflict. She mocks the knights and asks Deacon how many times she warned them. She says their captain lacks discipline, and she'll handle it herself. A knight begs her to save them, fearing her wrath. The archduke asks if he told them not to interfere. A lord tells his majesty to focus on ruling. The prince asks Edgar why talks with the marquise failed. The emperor mentions the Duke and Duchess love club causing rumors. The prince scolds Edgar for not even inviting her for tea. The emperor says Edgar ignores his subordinates and causes trouble. Jan asks Edgar if Lorelia truly dislikes him. Edgar says things can improve once you hit rock bottom. John insists he'll handle his love affairs without interference. The prince teases Edgar about Lorelia's next meeting. Edgar asks the emperor to stop meddling in love matters. Edgar claims he dislikes Lorelia. The emperor calls it obvious lying. Lorelia apologizes for being late and greets her brother. She worries about seeing him off and asks if he packed. Blefor says he's ready and wonders about the tower summons. He explains parallel worlds were discovered recently. Lorelia praises him, saying their parents would be proud. Blefor mentions the 46th fight and questions Edgar's inaction. Lorelia admits Edgar's been appearing around her more often. Blefor asks how she is and asks to give her something. He hands her a gift box for his anxious sister. Lorelia is surprised. Blefor says it's a special box. He explains it sends notes instantly and calls it a negotiation box. He asks if she likes his invention. Lorelia praises it and jokingly suggests calling it a mailbox. A servant summons Lorelia. She hugs Blefor goodbye. She reminds him to be careful and write often. Lorelia thinks he always contacts her unexpectedly. The box glows, and a letter arrives instantly. The letter isn't from Bleefor, but from Leah of another world. Lorelia is confused, as the handwriting matches her own. The letter says it's the 63rd attempt to reach her. It claims she's Duchess Ferial. Lorelia notices servants whispering nearby. She sees candles, petals, and the captain preparing something. Distracted, she assumes Bleefor was joking, despite the handwriting. Someone asks the captain why he's acting strange. Lorelia snaps, demanding to know if this is a joke. The captain realizes the truth and says nothing is unusual. Lorelia questions his seriousness, clearly offended. She says she's busy, and orders him not to summon her needlessly. She leaves, advising him to confess himself, not through others. The gentleman turns to Captain Lorelia, who dryly remarks that it appears the operation has failed. The gentleman asks what exactly he needs. The captain replies that he wanted to check how everything went, and suggests trying to explain what they were trying to achieve with this operation. The prince turns to Eddie, advising him not to do anything stupid, and reminding him that he is, after all, a prince. Meanwhile, the knights beg His Highness to save them. The Lord asks if this was their joint idea. The prince replies that he decided to perform the operation himself, adds that he has the evening free, and suggests dinner, considering it an excellent opportunity to finally meet. Edgar disagrees with this, and says that this is rather an excellent way to completely ruin the relationship between the two battalions. The prince apologizes and admits he thought the Marquise would like it. The Lord asks if he understands that he himself won't fall for it. His Majesty flushes and asks why he needs this impudent woman. The Lord assumes the prince is about to attack him himself and waves him off. The prince admits he thought he loved her. The Lord explains that he admires not just one trait, but her as a whole. But if he had to choose one word, he finds Lorelei dazzling. Hearing this, the prince realizes Eddie is head over heels in love. Edgar suggests ending it there, believing that the situation will have a negative impact on the morale of the battalions, and he will have to go and apologize. His Majesty says that he still doesn't understand what exactly he likes about her, and asks her to leave him alone. Meanwhile, the protagonist looks at the box her brother left behind and reads the letter. It says that Leah received her message, and that it's not a joke from Belfort no matter how hard it is to believe. The girl writes that their belle from her world only recently left for the Tower of Magicians, and she wonders if Lorelia knows about the existence of parallel worlds. Lorelei learns that her belle left 5 years ago, and realizes that the time difference between the worlds is roughly that long. The letter says that if she doesn't believe it, there's proof, which always follows O. After O, there's always K, because a woman isn't afraid to start over. It's a secret phrase known only to her. Reading it, Lorelei is amazed and can't understand how her brother could have created something like this. Lorelei decides to send her brother a letter asking him to return. She understands that no one should know about this, and everything should be discussed upon his arrival. For her, her brother is not just a talented magician, but the best, and she is sincerely proud of him. A girl from another world asks if she married Duke Ferial. The Marchioness replies that she did, and she's happy, then asks how Edgar is doing in that world, and what his favorite dish is. The girl writes that her beloved claims to adore all her cooking. She's still curious how Leah managed to become a marquise and receive a title if Terry is still so young. She adds that, in her world, her father may have suffered more because of the criminals who caused the carriage accident, and then simply retired. After reading this, the protagonist believes this is no accident. She decides she must find the culprits and punish them for both of them. The lady from another world writes that she still regrets not having found these freaks. The next morning, the maid approaches the main character and invites her mistress to close her eyes. Lorelei explains that she wasn't crying, just rubbing her eyes. The maid says she understands and gently applies a cold compress. The maid warns that if she goes out like this, rumors might spread that the Marquise is a crybaby, and advises her to take better care of herself. The Marquise thanks the nanny. The maid carefully asks if something bad happened to the girl yesterday. At that moment, Lorelei remembers Terry, her younger brother, who is being raised as a future Marquis. She realizes that her otherworldly self never received the title and was therefore able to marry. The lady reflects that in that world her parents are alive, but here they died. She doesn't understand who did it and why the investigation ruled it an accident. Judging by the other Leah's letters, she too doesn't know much. Lorelei understands that there's no need to rush, and that it's best to learn everything from the very beginning. The Marchioness decides to start with the accident itself. She recalls that Duke Ferial was in charge of the investigation and thinks it's worth at least trying to ask for his consent. The maid reminds her to leave the ice on and says she's always worried about her mistress. She asks if Lorelei wouldn't like to relax a little today. Hearing this, the main character smiles and asks if it's that noticeable. The nanny replies that it is, because she sees right through her. The maid tells us that the Fluffy Cafe has recently opened and that young noblewomen often come there. She adds that the rain has long since stopped and asks if the lady would like to go get her favorite desserts, asking her not to make the old nanny worry and to grab some sweets for Ferial's family. Hearing this, Lorelei asks in surprise why she would do this and involuntarily thinks whether they are already married. The nanny says that she thought so, and explains that they are talking about sweets for the Dowager Duchess and not for her son, since she invited Lorelai to tea. Lorelai says that she remembered, and the nanny assures that this way, everyone will understand everything, and advises her to put on a nicer dress. The lady asks if this is necessary. The nanny insists it's feminine etiquette, and Lorelai agrees, realizing there's no point in arguing. The maid hurries her so that she can get into the cafe. The girl agrees and whispers that her love of sweets is a secret. The maid doesn't understand who could possibly forbid her. When Lorelai enters the cafe, she is greeted by two sweet girls who tell her that happiness is sold here in fluffiness. Upon seeing the shop window, the main character notices that a caring female hand is immediately visible. The ladies at the table whisper to each other, recognizing the marquise, and think that even against the backdrop of the cafe she looks incredible. Lorelai approaches the saleswoman and says that she would like to choose some dessert. The saleswoman greets the marquise with delight, assures her that she will not regret her choice, and offers to show her the menu. The waitress talks about signature desserts with chocolate and cream fillings, as well as the fruit of the love of cheese and lemon, calling them the most popular. The saleswoman adds that there are 345 items on the menu in total and asks if the lady would like to learn about them. Lorelia politely declines. The marquise looks at a sumptuous chocolate cake and decides to start with that. Meanwhile, she overhears a conversation about how surprising it is that people like her even like sweets. The friend replies that she has never seen a knight with a cake and is used to seeing them with meat and drink, considering it funny. The third lady notes that the marquise is, after all, a woman, and there is nothing strange in her love for sweets, considering her to be the same as them. Lorelai apologizes to the saleswoman and explains that she is taking the sweets as a gift and will not eat them, asking her to choose something else, since she is not very knowledgeable about them. Hearing this, the ladies at the table decide that they were mistaken, and the marquise is not a fan of sweets at all. At this moment, the main character half extends her sword, then stops and calms down, realizing that she did not become a knight for this and she is still far from ideal. The saleswoman says she's already packed a box for her, deciding that anything too sweet might not be suitable, and has included other popular desserts. Seeing the box, Lorelai wonders how she'll walk down the street with it, realizing that they didn't even put chocolate cake in it, and considers it a complete failure. She decides that, no matter how delicious it is, she will not come back here again, thanks him, and leaves. On the street, the men notice the marquise and discuss whether Captain Devil likes sweets or just going to cafes. The lady says the cheesecake is delicious and calls the marquise a true miracle for making such sweets. The main character replies that she is grateful for the attention and time, and the lady assures that she is always glad to see her. The princess admits she's a little lonely here. She's technically a princess, but the prince himself rarely visits her, and she feels more like an ornament than a true princess. The lady says that the previous guards never came to her, but the marquise is completely different because she visits her every day, and she is incredibly happy about it. The princess looks at the marchioness and asks if she has spoiled the atmosphere again, and then asks if she is going to have tea with Madame Anne. Lorelai replies that she'll go after her shift. The princess asks about the dress, and she says with a smile that the maid insisted. Her Majesty asks what dress she's chosen. The girl replies that she's thinking of wearing the one she wore to the prince's birthday party last year. Hearing this, the princess, horrified, tells her not to even think about wearing it again and to throw it away immediately. Her Majesty declares that she is taking everything into her own hands and invites the lady to trust her. The marquise asks in surprise how exactly, and recalls how on the prince's last birthday she shone brighter than anyone else. At this point, the lord asks his Majesty why he's following him. The prince replies that he simply finds it amusing, and the servant reminds him of the empire's accumulated affairs. Edgard asks if his apology really seems so interesting, reminding him that it was the prince's fault that it all started, and because of this club he had to apologize, asking not to invite him anymore without a reason. The prince smiles and says they will meet again. The lord replies that the meeting will be for the worst possible reason and asks if any of the operations have been of any use. His Majesty advises him to calm down, runs away, and promises that he will return. Edgar asks the prince not to run so fast that he does not trip, and at that moment he wonders where Captain Lorelai is now. The lord notices the princess, greets her, and asks how she is doing, adding that he would like to clarify something if she has a minute. Edgar asks if she knows where Captain Lorelai is, but suddenly sees the marchioness. She explains that the princess gave her the dress because of an invitation to tea and asks him not to frown. He apologizes for his impudence, admits that he didn't recognize her, and asks if she was crying, touching her face. The lady pushes his hand away and coldly asks how he dares to touch her face so casually. The man immediately apologizes. At that moment, the Duke approaches them and notices that the bright dress suits her very well. Lorelai greets him upon seeing him. He asks why she's dressed up like that during the service. The Marquise replies that His Grace has nothing to worry about, since her task is to protect Princess Michelle, and clothes do not interfere with that. She adds that she finished her service early today and is now on personal time, asking that personal questions be avoided. The prince approaches them and says with a smile that this is exactly the answer he was expecting, then asks Archduke Jan what he is doing in a holy place. Jan replies that he is not prohibited from entering the palace and is not obliged to report every step. The prince then suggests that he go about his business, otherwise he will become curious about what exactly attracted him to his people. The lord says he didn't even have time to ask anything. The prince replies that there's no point in starting, and then suggests that Captains Lorelei and Edgard conclude the reception. The prince notices that Lorelei is going to Edgard's house anyway, and offers to accompany her. The girl immediately objects. His Majesty says that this is an order, and adds that traveling in different carriages in the same direction will be ineffective. The prince suggests that Eddie go ahead and jokes that if he wants to stop by the Fluffiness Cafe, he should, since he was told that Lorelei likes it there. His Majesty says that the carriage is already ready. He needs to finish the conversation with Archduke Jan, wishes them a good journey, and points out the right carriage. The Archduke remarks that the prince should act in accordance with his age and status. The prince asks if he's jealous, and asks him not to call him that again. His Majesty replies that he is holding back only out of nostalgia for the past, and suggests not to cross that line, asking if he is expressing himself clearly. Sitting in the carriage, the main character thinks that they will have to ride like this for half an hour, and considers it a real nightmare because the carriage is narrow and their knees touch. The lord says that he understands the inconvenience and asks for patience a little longer, thinking to himself that he did not mean to be so cold, and that he still has to apologize. Edgar turns to the captain and says that he would like to tell her something, and then asks for forgiveness. He admits that there was a misunderstanding between them and apologizes for everything that happened recently, adding that he would like her to understand something. The lord says he deeply respects her. At that moment, Lorelei recalls Leah's letter from another world about how attentive her beloved is and how he cares about her feelings. Edgard admits that he admires her as a captain. Hearing this, the main character is surprised. 3 years ago, she remembers how the Lord introduced her as the new captain of the 2nd Battalion, which would now lead the Red Wolves. The knights then became indignant and asked why a woman had been assigned to them, considering it a mockery and calling her weakling. Hearing this, Lorelei asked for a minute, stepped forward, drew her sword, and offered to find out who the weakling was here. She proposed a duel, quickly defeated one of the knights, and stated that she would not mind if the others attacked together. At that moment, she looked at Sir Edgar and wondered if he respected her, realizing that he had been laughing from the very beginning, and decided not to let herself be deceived and trapped. The Marquise asks if he's right when he says he respects her. Catching his gaze, she immediately says everything is fine, apologizes, and thanks him. The Lord replies that there is no need to thank her, because it is he who should apologize and be grateful to her. The girl can't understand why he sometimes has that expression on his face. She decides that, since that's the case, she wants to ask him one question. The lady says she knows about his involvement in the investigation of her parents' case. She understands how difficult this request is, but she still wants to see all the documentation. The Marquise emphasizes that she has no doubts about him or his methods. She knows the case is closed, and understands the impudence of asking for old papers. Lorelei admits she's been avoiding the topic for a long time, but now feels she'll feel better if she understands how her parents slipped into eternal sleep. She apologizes, but still asks. Edgard says he understands her. He admits that he himself thought she should know the truth about the incident, touches her hand, and assures her there's no need to apologize. The protagonist thanks him and notices that expression again. She feels familiar, but she can't understand why. Dowager Duchess Anna von Fariel informs the Marquise de Ville that she is forced to cancel their meeting today and sincerely regrets it. Anna explains that she sent the letter in advance, but it simply didn't arrive in time. The Marquise assures her that everything is fine and says that she will leave the sweets she brought with the servant. She then thanks Sir Edgar for accompanying her. He replies that it was easy, apologizes for the wasted visit, and suggests discussing her request the following day during service. The lady agrees to meet him tomorrow and says that she is leaving today. Lady Anne asks her to stay and apologizes for the long journey. As an apology, she offers to allow her second son to accompany the Marquise. The Duchess turns to her son Lloyd and asks him to come out to greet the guest. The young gentleman comes out and politely greets the Marquise and his brother. The main character thinks that this looks like an attempt at matchmaking, because she is just at the age when they are looking for a husband. The Marchioness reasons that the Duchess's second son is probably a good man. She extends her hand to him and thanks the Lord. Edgar suddenly grabs her hand, apologizes, and says that this won't do. He turns to the captain and asks if she wouldn't mind if he joins her this time. The Marquise, surprised, asks what he's talking about. The Lord offers to look at the papers on her case. The lady replies that if he doesn't mind, they can leave right now. Seeing his expression, she suddenly understands a lot. She remembers that from the very beginning, he never laughed at her. It occurs to her that it was a misunderstanding, and that in fact he admires and respects her. But the Marquis still doesn't understand why he behaved that way back then. Lord Edgard informs his mother and brother that he has urgent business to attend to, and asks permission to leave. Lloyd confesses to his brother that he felt awkward in front of his fiancée when he was asked to accompany Miss Devil. His mother agrees and tells Eddie to go, as duty calls. However, she hopes it's just a job and nothing more. The Marquise suggests going to his office, saying she needs to change. He replies that it will take time, suggests they continue as is, and adds that he wants to stop at one more place. The main character asks in surprise where exactly they are heading. A few minutes later, Lorelai finds herself in a cafe. She's glad she'll soon see the papers, but she doesn't understand why she needs to do it here. The Lord explains that he only has the most important documents with him now, and if she needs more, she can tell him. Edgeguard looks closely at the lady and asks if everything is all right with her. The Marquise clarifies why this particular place. He recalls the prince's words about her liking this cafe and says it was recommended to him. The protagonist politely points out that they might be misunderstood and doubts that business is usually discussed here. She admits that the staff and the environment itself put a little pressure on her. A waitress approaches them and asks if they are ready to order. The gentleman asks for a minute. The Lord tells the captain that if she is not comfortable here, they can go to another cafe. Hearing this, Lorelai smiles and says she likes it here. She notes the good desserts and suggests they order something. The waitress excitedly says she is glad to see the captain again and informs him that this is an elite imperial cafe with a large selection of drinks. The main character is overwhelmed by the abundance of desserts and asks Sir Edgar what he'll choose. He replies that he'll take the last chocolate with cream. Lorelai asks him, surprised, if he likes chocolate. He replies that he didn't know it was forbidden. The lady laughs and says, of course not. He asks her not to laugh, and she smiles and apologizes. Looking through the documents, the protagonist points out a discrepancy. According to the documents, the cart was pulled by a black horse with white fur on all its hooves. The Lord confirms this and says that he remembers the horse well because he saw it himself and noticed the white fur above its 4 hooves. Lorelai insists that this can't be true. Their horse only had white fur on 3 hooves, and she remembers that clearly. At that moment, the thought occurs to her that this really was a descent into eternal sleep. She thinks she should ask him to reopen the investigation, but she's not sure if he'll agree to take on such an old case. Lorelai turns to Sir Edgar, but he interrupts her and first apologizes for the quality of the investigation, admitting it was his mistake. At this moment, it seems to the Marquise that he will refuse after all. The gentleman asks if he can make things right and earn her forgiveness. Hearing this, the girl replies that of course, adding that it is she who should be asking for the favor and thanking him. The Lord asks in surprise what she is thanking him for and says that he has another chance. His expression haunts the Marquise all day. It seems alien to her, and yet painfully familiar at the same time. Edgar says he'll try to get the horse's autopsy records first. At this moment, the protagonist realizes that her father always looked at her mother with the same gaze. She turns to the gentleman and says she wants to clarify something. The lady herself doesn't understand what came over her and asks if his reputation will suffer if he reopens the case. He replies that it will. The Marquise asks why he still wants to help her. Remembering his words about how he always cares about her comfort, she suddenly asks if it's only out of respect. Lord explains that it's not just a matter of respect. Reopening her parents' case will bring him a reprimand and many difficulties, but he wants to correct his mistake, even if it's too late. Edgar says the late Marquis and his wife were longtime friends of her mother. He recalls their kindness and wonders if there was something more to their descent into eternal sleep. He admits that, as the person investigating the case, he must take responsibility. Edgar apologizes deeply and asks if she will give him a chance to make things right. The lady thanks him, apologizes, and asks him to finish for today. After the Marchioness leaves, the prince runs up to the Lord and, seeing her expression, jokes that she was the one who got the brush off today. He asks if it's true. The Lord asks His Majesty what he is doing here. He doesn't answer directly and invites him to sit down. Edgar notices the prince's disguise. Kane asks how he likes it and suggests returning to the conversation. The prince asks again who turned him down and demands to tell everything in order. The gentleman explains that nothing of the sort happened and reminds him that he had already told him that he did not like the Marquise that much, and that, moreover, she was too good for him. The prince asks who is her equal then. The Lord replies that she is the only female Marquise in the Empire, captain of the 2nd Battalion and 4th Aura Mage. Edgar believes that she would be suited to someone equally distinguished, but of a slightly lower pedigree, given her position. He reasons that this man is unlikely to leave his family, will most likely be the 2nd son in the family, and must definitely master fencing, or better yet, be a knight. The prince abruptly orders him to stop and asks if he would really be satisfied if the Marquise married someone else. The Lord replies that he probably won't mind, but immediately slams the table hard. The prince notices that the table is broken and says he already has a suitable candidate. His Majesty proposes one of the young members of the club, Sir Pipe, the 2nd son of a viscount and a knight, who even said that he was ready to leave the club for the sake of marriage with the Marchioness. Edgar tells the prince that if he was trying to make him jealous, he might as well give up, it won't work anyway. The prince asks in surprise why, and says that the family issue is solvable, since he can introduce double surnames. The Lord replies that this is not the case at all, and that nothing would have worked anyway. The prince asks sharply if he is afraid of what others will say. The gentleman replies that the fact is that Captain Lorelai hates him, and in a rage he breaks the table in half. The prince's assistant apologizes to the waitress, and assures that all damages will be paid. His Majesty tells Eddie everything is fine, and suggests he simply trust him, adding that he'll have to try. The Lord asks how, and the prince replies that there's always a way out. The next day, the main character trains, but she is haunted by the question of who could have done this to her parents. The Marquise feels she's missing an important detail and recalls the horse switch. She wonders who the coachman was that day, and she doesn't know what to tell her brother. A maid approaches her and apologizes for disturbing her. The lady replies that everything is fine and asks what happened. The nanny reports that Duke Feriel stopped by, left a gift, and then left. The main character is surprised and asks why he came. The maid says the box seems strange to her. Lorelai picks it up and wonders if this is really the only reason he came. The Marquise doesn't understand what Captain Edgar is up to. She thinks he brought the gift himself, but suddenly she imagines there might be a bomb inside, as he's been acting suspiciously all day. She remembers how he constantly apologized and ordered a chocolate cake just for her, giving her the last cake. The lady decides these are foolish thoughts. His words sounded too sincere, and there couldn't be any bomb in there. The Marquise opens the box and is surprised to see flowers. In the box, she finds a letter which says that Edgar gave her not just a bouquet, but a whole carriage of flowers. After reading this, she's unsure whether to be happy about just one box, and continues reading about how it was madness. She's asked to guess his answer to the question of why there are so many flowers. He bought all the flowers that mean love in the language of flowers, that's why there are so many of them, and because of this, all the plants in the garden were replaced. The nanny asks if her mistress called her, if she's cold, and if she should make some tea. The lady replies that everything is fine, and asks what kind of flowers they are. The maid explains that these are anadiers, rare and expensive flowers from the Red Desert. The lady asks what they mean. The nanny replies that in the language of flowers, they signify a desire to comfort. The main character says she still wants some tea and asks for it to be brewed. The nanny promises to do so right away. The next day, the assistant reports to the captain that all the documents have been verified. He praises the work and says he'll look into everything himself. The vice captain notices that the gentleman barely sleeps and has only had 4 hours of rest in 3 days. He says love is important, but at this rate, he'll burn himself out. The captain replies that he is not doing this for love. The deacon says that it is not worth giving up right after the bouquet and asks with surprise why he sent the flowers in such a gloomy box. Edgar recalls the prince's words about the Marquise's taste and her preference for the color black. The deacon remarks that he's placing too much trust in the club and advises him to simply speak his mind. Edgar asks the vice captain if he knows how many women in the empire independently rule their clans. He replies that, apparently, only the second captain. The master explains that ruling a clan is a heavy burden. Lorelai does everything she can, but her efforts are unrecognized, and her burden is heavier than anyone else's. Edgar says he can't ask her to give up everything for the sake of becoming a duchess. He understands how much she has to worry about, and believes that's exactly how she deserves to be treated. At this moment, the main character enters the office and asks if he is free. The lady greets the captain and says she's been informed that the horse's body is ready for inspection. She asks again if he's busy, and adds that if he's tired, she can go alone. Edward objects and offers to go together right now, assuring that he is not that tired. As the captain takes a step, he staggers slightly and nearly falls on the girl. She manages to catch him and asks anxiously if he's okay. Lord insists he feels perfectly fine. Lorelai notices his face is flushed and assumes he's unwell, suggesting they go alone. But he insists everything is fine and suggests they go so as not to be late. On the way, the Lord thinks that progress may have been made between them, after which he quickly leaves the office. Sir Pipe greets them, kneels, and kisses his mistress's hand. The prince watches, thinking the club's operation has begun, and a suitable candidate pops into his head. Pipe apologizes to the lady. She replies that everything is fine, but the Lord is visibly indignant. Pipe offers the girl a chocolate cake and adds that he forgot to mention that it was from Edgar. The protagonist says she didn't expect Sir Pipe to hand her the cake in person. She admits to being surprised and assumes he was apologizing for his recent arguments with her knights. The servant explains that he had long doubted whether to bury the horse, but the master loved it so much that they decided to do everything with dignity. He then asks if they've finished. Edgar says he can check everything if she wants, but the lady assures her that there is no need, and she can handle it herself. Suddenly, the servant cries out, saying that this cannot be, and insists that they definitely buried the master's horse right here. The Lord examines the remains and says they're definitely not those of a horse. The Marquise agrees, and suggests it's a chimera, as thanks to Belle's training, she's seen such remains before. Lorelai confidently asserts that it's not his horse, and that they really have been put into eternal sleep. After these words, she begins to cry. Edgar invites the lady to trust him and says that he will become her sword. Meanwhile, the lady with red hair asks next when they will finally leave this backwater. The man asks what Ignis doesn't like this time, and asks her not to worry, adding that if she needs something, he will put anyone into eternal sleep for her. The woman asks how much longer they must wait for the old man. He replies that they can leave at any time if she doesn't want to wait, and that the chimera is already ready. Next says they can deal with them right now. When the bird lands on the lady's hand, she remarks that the fun looks like it's about to begin. Ignis reports that they've discovered the remains of his chimera. He replies, "That's great, because he's getting bored." The woman with red hair says that if that's the case, then it's time to deal with them. At this time, the Marquise asks the captain if he is finished with the documents, then hands him another sheet and says that it is also worth studying. Suddenly, the papers fly apart. The protagonist looks at the Lord and asks if he's okay, noticing that he's flushed and wondering if he's in any pain. Lorelei says she will call a doctor, but the Lord objects and assures her that he is fine. The Marquise believes all the documents have been reviewed and everything is now ready. She smiles and expresses hope that the reinvestigation will go smoothly. The gentlemen approach His Majesty and remind him that the case was closed 3 years ago. They don't understand how this could have changed, and they believe that the powers of the state cannot be used for personal whims. The courtiers add that this looks like privileged treatment for the captain of the knights. Hearing this, the protagonist objects and explains that it doesn't matter how much time has passed. If there's a serious reason to review the case, they are obligated to form a team and review everything again. The Marquise asks to look at her as an ordinary citizen who has experienced much suffering, and not as a captain of knights, emphasizing that anyone would be in her place. The Duke says she can only apply directly because she's the captain. He adds that forming a team will take time and require strict oversight, as no case has ever been approved so quickly. Jan asks if this isn't a manifestation of special treatment. The other gentlemen agree with him and believe they are effectively being accused of it, so they propose stopping everything and ask His Majesty not to allow it. At this point, the protagonist realizes she must do something to bring justice to her parents, and asks what if it really is a privilege. The Lord says he's talking about Marquis von Devil and his wife, and reminds everyone present that they've received their help at least once. He recalls how the Marquis was always the first to fight, and opened his warehouses to the starving in hard times. He adds that people still come to their graves with flowers at any time of year, and asks whether anyone really believes that the people will condemn a reinvestigation of their plunge into eternal sleep. Edgar states that even if it completely discredits him, due to his responsibility for closing the case, he still wants to reopen the investigation and asks His Majesty to do so. The Emperor asks if he is ready to stand by his words. The Lord confidently replies that he is. His Majesty announces that he is authorizing the assembly of a team for investigation, as the late Marquis von Devil was dear to him, and adds that any objections will be regarded as disagreement with his decision. Hearing this, the main character thanks His Majesty. Walking down the corridor, the prince turns to the captains and notes that they have done an excellent job today. He adds that he discussed this with his father, but he was so stubborn that the prince doubted his success. The Marchioness thanks the prince and says this is only the beginning. At this point, the Duke asks to speak with her, explaining that he wants to help the team. Ian says he would like to speak with Captain Lorelia in person. The Marchioness asks what he means by help. The Duke tells her not to strain herself and explains that he came to apologize, adding that Sir Edgar's words gave him pause. The Duke says she must have suffered all this time, understands how hard it was for her after her parents fell into eternal sleep, and admits that he only made things worse by asking for forgiveness. The Marquise replies that everything is fine, asks him not to say that and not to apologize, removing his hand. The Duke says he still wants to help. He explains that Belford hasn't returned yet and the team needs a mage. Since the Ministry of Magic is under his control, he plans to send an archmage to them and asks if she agrees. The girl agrees, and he replies that he will report this to the ministry and that they will meet soon. The gentleman tells Captain Lorelia that the late Marquis, her father, was very dear to him. His Highness asks the Marchioness if she is all right and if she is hurt. The lady replies that she is fine. The prince admits that he was very worried, and Edgar clarifies whether everything is really all right. Lorelei says he promised to send an archmage, and admits she was a bit skeptical about it. The prince remarks that he probably just wants to assign his man to her. The lady replies that that's not necessary, adding that he mentioned how dear her parents were to him. His Majesty is surprised by these words and says it's strange, since he was told that Duke Yang would soon die or something of the sort. The Lord notes that they will have to proceed with extreme caution. Edgar says that Archduke Jan never does anything without a reason, and asks the captain again if everything is all right with her. The lady thanks him and says that she is especially grateful, admitting that she did not expect such an attitude towards her parents. The lady from another world explains that on Terry's birthday, his father took him out of school and took him on a trip without telling his mother, and asks if she can imagine it, adding that sometimes he is simply unbearable. She also shares that today her mother taught her how to bake an apple pie, and now she will be able to make it for her beloved, asking what her father gave her for the wedding. At this point, the main character says that if her parents were alive, they would be very happy, after which she cannot hold back her tears. The prince calms her down and suggests that she not pay attention to those around her. Edgar places his hand on her shoulder and says that, if it's any consolation, her parents would be happy knowing what a strong and courageous daughter she has become. The main character notices that Sir Edgar's hand is shaking, and, looking at him, thinks that he looks even worse than her. Lorelei smiles and says she didn't expect him to be such a kind captain. She admits she used to think he was arrogant and difficult to deal with, and regrets being too rude to him. The Lord replies that she shouldn't say that, believing that it was a common misunderstanding. The Marquise says she still has things to do and needs to go. the gentlemen wish her good work. When the prince is alone with the lord, he asks if everything went well. He replies that she called him kind. The protagonist overhears this conversation from behind the door. She smiles and thinks about how they thought she'd left, and she can't understand why Edgar seemed so attractive to her at that moment. The Duke announces that the investigation into the Marquis and his wife's immersion in eternal sleep will be reopened from today, and introduces a mage from the ministry, asking everyone to be polite to her. The red-haired woman introduces herself as Katie, Archmage and head of the Ministry of Magic, and says she is honored to be part of the investigation. The gentlemen respond that they cannot even imagine how glad they are to see her, and one jokes that if they were alone with the knights of the 1st Battalion for a little longer, they would not be able to bear it. The other knights smile and say that they are also glad of her arrival, because finally someone smart will help with the investigation, after which a verbal skirmish begins between the battalions. Hearing this, the Lord turns to Sir Pipe and tells him not to worry about strength, suggesting that the knights sit down and be silent. The main character hits one of the knights, then apologizes and explains that she was just teaching them a lesson. Katie says there's no need to apologize, as she enjoys the lively atmosphere, and suggests that's why Michelle loves the knights. The Duke explains that Archmage Katie is the sister of Her Highness Princess Michelle. Hearing this, the knights understand why her smile seemed familiar. The knights admire her for coming to a distant land and becoming the head of the Ministry of Magic, saying that she is truly something to be admired. Katie suggests getting down to business and asks about the progress of the investigation. After reviewing the documents, the Archmage says that with this evidence, they can try to find the mage who created the chimera by studying the residual mana, but admits that there is a serious problem. Katie explains that due to the body's age, extracting the mana will take longer than usual. The protagonist asks how much longer. Katie replies, at least 3 months. The Lord notes that it's taking longer than they expected and suggests they make the most of the time by learning something else. The Duke says the captain already investigated everything possible 3 years ago. Edgar adds that the coachman was put into eternal sleep in the wilderness without witnesses, and suggests rechecking the documents in the hopes of finding new leads. The protagonist asks the captain to let her take care of it, and says that she has a source, the details of which she will explain later, asking if they can trust her. Alone in her room, Lorelei decides to write a letter to the other world. She asks how Leah is doing, and writes that she wants to tell her something special today. She'd originally wanted to write about it in her first letter, but she couldn't bring herself to do so. She kept quiet about her parents and the incident with the cart because she enjoyed hearing her stories. The Marquise feels as if these letters have reunited her with her parents, as if they were alive and happy somewhere. She explains that she hesitated to tell the truth, knowing how difficult it would be to share her stories afterward. The main character writes that she understands her better than anyone else because she is herself, and admits that she is now forced to write because she needs help. She reports that the investigation has been reopened, but there is not enough evidence, and asks to tell everything that is known about the criminal. Having finished the letter, the main character puts the sheet of paper in a box, waits a bit, and finally receives a reply. In the letter, Leah apologizes for not being able to tell more, explaining that her father and Edgar knew little about the criminal, and she herself does not know much. Lorelei is at a loss and doesn't know what to do next. Leah writes that the only thing she's been able to discover is that the mage who enchanted the chimera is hiding in the Red Desert. Leah adds that she may not be able to heal all the wounds, but she will help as much as she can, and thanks for the trust, understanding how difficult it is to bear this burden alone. She writes that she wants the Marquise to know that she deserves to be loved, because she works hard, has been through a lot, and this time she will definitely succeed. After reading the letter, the main character begins to cry, and thinks that Leah was right, and she is really trying. Lorelei says that even if she has to risk everything, she will still find the culprit. The Marchioness asks why they are not allowed to leave. The Lord explains that one of the captains must remain to guard the Imperial Palace. The lady suggests that Sir Edgar remain, but he objects, reminding her that he is in charge of the investigation. Lorelei insists that he is also responsible for guarding the palace, and says that she obtained this information, asking if she should take responsibility if the plan fails. The Lord asks if she understands how dangerous the Red Desert is, not to mention the monsters, and believes that she will have an extremely difficult time there. Hearing this, the main character says she now understands why they won't take her. He replies that he's simply worried about her. The Marquise claims that people always underestimated her because she was a girl, and admits that she felt like he was the only one who saw a true knight in her. Lorelei replies that if this is the order of the captain of the 1st Battalion, she has no right to disobey him. Afterwards, she wishes them luck in catching the culprit. At this time, Belfort takes the box in his hand and notices that the situation is strange because Leah still hasn't responded. Nana asks why he is so worried and suggests that his device might simply be broken. The guy confidently says the letters definitely arrived. He even installed magical stones that couldn't be easily damaged. Nana reasons that if it's not the device, then perhaps something has happened to her. She then asks him not to worry, suggesting that she might be busy with the night captain's duties. Belfort considers for a moment and decides to return home. The girl is surprised, noting that he's only been in the tower for a week, and asks if the elders will allow him to leave. He confidently replies that they will. Nana looks at him and screams, asking if he's planning to run away. Hearing this, he covers her mouth and asks her not to scream so loudly, adding that he'll only be gone for a short while. The girl complains of difficulty breathing. When he removes his hand, she asks if he knows what happens to fugitive mages. Nana explains that they are declared traitors to noble magic, branded as criminals, and hunted for life. Belfort says that's why he needs to be extremely careful. Then he adds that she'll cover for him, meaning he won't be caught. Nana asks what the point is if she stays here. Then she declares that she will go with him because she can't let him go alone. The girl says that, if what's written is to be believed, it's obvious he'll die on the way to the Red Desert. She packs a small bag, and the guy happily remarks that this is wonderful, because they're already leaving. Meanwhile, the expedition reaches the Red Desert. The Lord asks if they are sure anyone lives here at all. Katie replies that the Red Desert is the perfect hideout for mages. The more dangerous a place, the fewer people approach it. The knight turns to the captain and reports that the crew is exhausted. The monsters continue, and the storm only intensifies their suffering. The Lord suggests stopping and returning to the village. The Archmage notes that this is unnecessary and suggests they rest in a nearby house. Edgar says they'll check the place out. A few minutes later, the party arrives at the house, and the knight says it looks like no one's inside. Suddenly, a strange sound is heard, and they decide to enter. A woman comes out to greet them. She informs them that they have arrived at the Red Hotel. The Lord apologizes for his sudden appearance. The lady replies that everything is fine and she understands such situations, then offers them some refreshments. The woman says no one has visited them in a while, and she welcomes guests even with a sword at their throat. Then she asks if they're looking for someone. The knight asks if they've heard of a mage controlling chimeras. She replies that she has heard something similar, but a long time ago. The Lord says that magicians lose their power when they have children, so love and family are forbidden to them. The man adds that the Red Desert truly is the best place for mages. Here they can love and have children, hidden from the world. The woman says that they used to be magicians too, but now they just live here. Katie notes that a fugitive remains a fugitive. Lord asks if that seems romantic, as not everyone finds it easy to express their feelings openly. Edgar thinks he should apologize first. At this time, the main character thinks about how things are going for them and is sure that they will figure everything out because the great Captain Edgar is with them. Suddenly, the main character orders the nanny to call the rider and says that she urgently needs to go to the Red Desert. Not long before, she had read a letter from Leah, which stated that those responsible for the carriage incident were more than just talented mages. She hesitated for a long time, but then revealed that they were connected to a powerful faction rebelling against the crown. Lorelei screams and says that Sir Edgar is in danger. The Marquise reads that a massive uprising with many casualties will begin on the Crown Prince's birthday. The one who will plunge people into eternal sleep is a mage hiding in the Red Desert and controlling a chimera. At this time, the captain is attacked by a monster, and he fights with all his might. Edgar knows he'll have to push himself to the limit if they're to make it back alive. A man and a woman watch them. The woman orders the monster to finish them off, but when the Duke wounds the creature, the man screams and threatens to personally put them into eternal sleep. Edgar realizes that danger cannot be avoided and suggests calling Archmage Katie and preparing for teleportation. The knight warns the captain about another animal behind him, but at that moment the main character appears and saves him. The astonished captain asks Lorelei how she ended up here. The lady offers to leave the creature with her. The protagonist understands that the chimera's weak points are the joints between its body parts. If she strikes at random, it will constantly regenerate. Even an aura mage like Leah would have a hard time, so she needs to aim for unnatural-looking spots. The man who created this creature says that this won't work, but suddenly Belfort appears with his childhood friend, Ingus. Meanwhile, Lorelei deals with the monster. The man, seeing his creation, is enraged, as nothing remains of him. The woman remarks that it seems to be over, looks at the protagonist, and says that they will meet again. The brother approaches Lorelei and informs her that the enemies have escaped, then asks if she is all right. The lady replies that she is fine, and inquires about Sir Edgar's condition. The brother says that Nana is treating him. The Marchioness approaches the Lord and asks if he's all right. Edgar looks at her and apologizes, admitting he's ashamed. The lady replies that things could have ended much worse. Lord says that's not the issue, explaining that he previously stated that it would be difficult for a woman here. He admits that he let his emotions get the better of him and was mistaken. Edgar says he wants to apologize at the first opportunity, is sincerely sorry, and asks if she can forgive him, realizing that now is not the best time. The Marquise replies that if he is truly sorry, he will ask if he can go on a date with her. At this point, the red-haired woman cries out, saying they've almost succeeded. She wonders where these mages came from, then smiles and remarks that things won't be easy from here. The man assures them that there will still be a chance, since they have a spy. He adds that when the time comes, they shouldn't screw up. After a hard battle, Lord Edgar was wounded, and the prince came to see him in the hospital. His Majesty says he can't do anything without him, and explains that the Archduke has been acting strangely lately. He asks him not to leave him, and reminds him that he must go to a meeting with Captain Lorelei. Edgar suddenly rises from his bed, and declares that he is going home today, asking why His Majesty is acting as if he is at a funeral. The prince asks Eddie in surprise if he is truly fully recovered, and if he is really going to go home. The Lord replies that he is fine, and clarifies what the prince meant by the Archduke's strange behavior, wondering if he is increasing his power again. The prince replies that, on the contrary, he does nothing at all and has completely isolated himself from everyone. His Majesty recalls how, 15 years ago, he saw a cracked egg from which poison leaked and a monster burst forth. The knights then shouted to protect the king and prince and blocked the entrance to the banquet hall. The prince says he heard that the Archduke had withdrawn from everyone before that incident. Edgar asks His Majesty not to worry, promising to protect him as he did then, and places his hand on his shoulder. At that moment, Lorelei enters the room. Upon seeing them, she apologizes and explains that Lord Ordo let her in, adding that they seem to be having a wonderful time and that Sir Edgar should get dressed first. The prince screams and demands that her hands be removed. The Lord replies that he didn't start it and asks Captain Lorelei to hand him the clothes. As the Lord dresses, the protagonist apologizes for the sudden visit. He asks her not to apologize and thanks her for coming. The lady asks if he's feeling better. He replies that it's thanks to her, and if she hadn't intervened, he might have fallen into eternal sleep. The Marquise asks him not to thank her, saying she was simply lucky to meet Belle. He recalls that she mentioned a date back then. Lorelei screams and asks the captain why he is still here and hasn't returned home. Edgar explains that he wanted him and his people to be treated here, and knew she would be able to visit him. The Marchioness says she has something to say. She admits it was rash to ask him out, since he's a duke and she's a Marchioness, and titles can't be ignored, so they can never marry. Then, the main character thinks that she let her emotions get the better of her and said too much, and asks him to forget her words. Edgar asks what will happen if he gives up the title and wonders if she will then give him a chance to court her. Hearing this, the main character is surprised and suggests inviting him to her place instead of a regular date. The next day, Edgar comes to see his mistress. The Marquise says she invited him to show him something and doesn't understand why the servants are so excited. The Lord says she may not need the flowers, but he brought them for her anyway. The lady thanks him for the beautiful flowers. Belfort asks if they've met to discuss the investigation. The lady answers affirmatively, and the Lord agrees. His brother suggests starting with examining the box. Edgar notices that it's meant for jewelry. Belfort explains that this is not an ordinary box, and with its help, one can contact a parallel world. Lorelei says she understands how hard it is to believe, but it's true. That's why she called him, thinking he should know. The Lord reads the sheets and asks in surprise what all this means. The boy explains to the captain that it's hard to believe, but in the tower, magicians study parallel worlds and seek ways to communicate with them. He's conducting an experiment to understand why this box is connected to another world. The Lord opens the box and confirms that the letter has indeed arrived. The letter states that the author is unsure whether to speak about this and doubts whether it's right to change the future. However, she doesn't want this horror to happen again and asks for vigilance on the Crown Prince's birthday. Leah writes that on that fateful night, many people will fall into eternal sleep, and Princess Michelle may be among them. And when the sun rises, even more will lose their lives due to machinations, including Archduke Jan, the instigator of the uprising. Lorelei screams and tells the Lord that it is all true, asking him to believe what is written and reminding him that she had already mentioned her earlier. The lady explains that thanks to the box, she learned about the criminals in the Red Desert, and one of the letters revealed the truth about that very incident. She assures everyone that every word in the letter is true. Lorelei admits it sounds ridiculous, but asks him to believe her. The Lord replies that he does, adding that he would have believed her anyway, asking the captain to calm down. The main character thanks him for his understanding. Edgar says that reporting a conspiracy based solely on a letter is problematic. He suggests gathering more evidence and continuing to monitor those mages. The Marchioness tells Sir Edgar she has a proposition. She notes that the mages were incredibly powerful and suggests training together until the prince's birthday, asking if he has the time. Hearing this, the Lord enthusiastically replies that everything is decided and that it sounds excellent, admitting that he himself wanted to propose the same thing. The Marquise says she's pleased to hear this and thanks him. The gentleman objects, believing he should be the one thanking her. Belfort reminds that he is still here. During tea with the princess and her sister, Lorelei says that she and the Lord train every day. The princess remarks that this sounds romantic. The Marchioness replies that Belle will also be there, so she doesn't see the romance in it. Katie says the princess is currently unable to think about anything other than a romantic relationship, and she believes it will last a long time. The main character thinks that the crown prince behaves the same way as Michelle, and they are very similar. Katie asks if the three of them will train together. Lorelei answers affirmatively, adding that she thinks Katie needs individual training. The princess screams and asks if the captain understands what this means. She says they need to be fully prepared and considers this an excellent opportunity. Michelle suggests watching her raise her arm and asks if this training is body-based, suggesting that something special might happen then, and points out to the captain that she is holding the wrong position. The princess pretends to fall and asks if she could be taught, wondering if she got the hint. Michelle excitedly explains that they'll be touching each other then, and considers it a great way to test their feelings. If he touches her hand and her heart beats faster, it means it's love. The princess asks how training can lead to this, and thinks it's easier to look at it from a different perspective. She asks if the Marquise gets nervous when she touches the knight's hands. Lorelei replies that she wants to end this conversation quickly. However, the princess asks about Belle's hand. The Marchioness says they used to hold hands as children, but now it bothers her, especially since he's her brother. Hearing this, Michelle smiles and says that she can see how it is precisely from this person's touch that her heart beats faster, asking if this is true. The protagonist asks Edgar what this means. He holds up her sword and explains that spreading her aura around the blade will make it much easier to control. At that moment, the Marquise recalls the princess's words about how just the touch of this man makes her heart beat faster. After that, she asks the Lord what all this means. Edgar asks in surprise if he's explained it poorly. The lady replies that she understands everything and thanks him. Suddenly, the Marquise collapses. Looking back, she sees a monster controlled by a man. He commands the beast to trample them. Edgar looks at the monster and, screaming, says he doesn't care even about a combined attack. He concludes that this creature's regeneration is better than the last one. The Marquise says that she thinks they can take her out in one go, and so she needs to strike. Lorelai notices Nanny coming into the yard at that moment. The monster screams and warns that such sudden appearances could put her in danger. As the monster approaches the nanny, the Marquise suddenly runs up and slashes at it with her sword. She then screams and asks why she's there, suggesting that she flee immediately with Belle and the others. The nanny replies that's exactly why she came. She reports that the young gentleman has disappeared and that she received a message from Lady Nana. Meanwhile, Nex, sitting on the monster, indignantly asks how this girl dares to treat his chimera like that and do whatever she wants. After that, he attacks her. Edgar, screaming, turns to the captain and warns her to be careful. The Marquise doesn't have time to retreat, and the chimera attacks her. Nex says with satisfaction that he knew everything would be much simpler without Belle, and that it seems he didn't need this guy at all. At this moment, the Lord cuts off the chimera's hand with his sword, freeing the Marquise. Lorelai asks what he did to Belle. The chimera's owner calls him insolent and, screaming, declares that he attacked his creation, and therefore he will not tolerate it. Nex rushes at the Lord, shouting at him not to dare dodge. The protagonist realizes that if this continues, the battle will turn into a battle of attrition. She notices that in his rage, the enemy is opening up gaps in his defenses and is now completely focused on Sir Edgar. The Marquise remembers that spreading an aura around the sword will make it easier to control. With one decisive blow, she plunges the chimera into eternal slumber. Nex finds himself on the ground and cannot believe what has happened, because he considered this creation of his to be the strongest. Lorelai screams that it's time to end this and demands to know where her brother is. Nex replies that he doesn't know. Lady objects and orders him to tell her everything. Nex admits that he forced him to do it, and that both today's attack and the attack related to her parents were his doing. The protagonist asks in surprise if he put her parents into eternal sleep. He replies that he was merely obeying orders and explains that he was ordered to replace their horse. Lorelai angrily says that she will finish him off, but at that moment, he disappears using magic. Edgar suggests that the captain lower the sword and examine her hand, believing that the rest can wait. Meanwhile, in the mage tower, the chief mage announces that everyone has gathered and begins with good news. They finally managed to capture Belfour von Devil. The chief mage adds that one person deserves special praise, Master Katie. He then declares the meeting closed and promises to inform them if any new information emerges. Ignis turns to Nex and asks if he intends to continue failing like this, believing his confidence was just a bluff. He replies that they were too strong, and even a combined attack wouldn't have helped. The red-haired lady sharply tells him to stop whining and asks if he wants to give in. Then she reminds him of the day 15 years ago. Hearing this, Nex falls to her knees and apologizes. She suggests he focus on the idea of an independent state the Archduke wants to create and imagine the day when they are free of magic. Ignis says he believes in the day when they can leave the Red Desert and live with their heads held high. Katie approaches them and asks if they'll screw up again. She adds that she wonders how they're going to increase their power if things continue like this. Ignis replies that she was only talking, although she didn't even know whether Belfour was there or not. Katie explains that she still caught him, despite the changed circumstances, and asks what her white dog was doing at that time. The Archduke approaches them and asks Master Katie to outline her plan. She replies that in 3 days she will spread word of Belfort's tracks in the Red Desert and then send the Marquise there. The Archmage believes all that remains is for them to deal with her. The Archduke declares that he will not tolerate any more failures. The next day, Katie reports finding traces of Belfort. Upon hearing this, the protagonist asks what kind of traces and inquires if he's okay. The Archmage replies that she's not sure, but someone will have to go there and check everything out. She adds that Belfort's magical aura has been spotted in the Red Desert. The Marchioness declares that she will go there herself. The Lord objects and says he could go with her, but the lady insists that she must do so. Edgar says that he will accompany her then, realizing how powerful those magicians are. Katie respectfully notes that one of them must stay behind to protect the palace, and offers to trust her, assuring him that she will not be wrong this time. Lorelai asks Sir Edgar not to worry, and says that Nana and the vice captain will go with them. The Lord says that let everything be according to their decision, and adds that he will report this to His Majesty. After this, Katie secludes herself in a room and uses magic to contact the Archduke, informing him that everything has been done and that in a week Captain Lorelai will leave for the desert. The Archmage notes that Nana could theoretically catch up with her using magic, and turns to his lordship saying that they were right. At this moment, Lorelai appears in the mirror and asks if Katie was a spy for the Archduke. Seeing her, Katie is very surprised and asks how she ended up here. The prince, along with others, also enters the room and, screaming, announces that the operation is complete. Nana turns to the Archmage and tells her that she acted carelessly. She explains that her magic played a role, but the decisive factor was the Marquise's intuition and Duke Edgar's plan, and advises against even attempting anything. The Lord notes that this is a powerful, magical formation. The prince looks at him and says that it looks like Eddie is angry. Katie says this can't be true, and she doesn't understand how she could have made a mistake. Edgar offers the Archmage a deal, reminding her that her life and the life of her younger sister, Princess Michelle, are at stake. The main character approaches Katie, asks where her brother is, and presses a sword to her neck. A few days earlier, the prince says that, judging by her words, this is true, and asks if she doesn't think that Archmage Katie is a spy for the Archduke, and where is the evidence. Lorelai explains that during the attack on the training field, she felt as if the attacker knew Belfort's exact location. The Marquise adds that Belle was supposed to train with them, but he left to meet with Nana. Only Katie and Princess Michelle knew about the training. Edgar says the letter portrays Princess Michelle as a victim, making her involvement in the conspiracy unlikely. Nana reports that when Belle's magical aura disappeared, a faint trace of Master Katie's magic was noticed. The Marquise says it was the Archduke who insisted on Katie's participation in the investigation, and that day pretended to mourn her parents, which she believes was a lie. The Lord remarks that if the contents of the letter are true, it means that Michelle will be on the verge of falling into eternal sleep during the festive evening. The prince asks Master Ordo if there have been any reports about Master Katie from the shadow of the Ministry of Magic. He replies that when Katie entered the chambers, no one seemed to notice her presence, and later no one was found in the room. Traces of magic were found only in the mirror. The prince asks Nana to check the mirror. The Lord suggests they wait and check with the shadow of the Ministry of Magic. The prince sharply replies that this is exactly what he meant, and asks if they think he's joking. At this point, Lorelai asks again where her brother is. Katie reassures her, and says she didn't put him into eternal sleep. The protagonist presses a sword to her neck and says Katie doesn't understand her situation. Realizing things are bad, Katie reveals where Belle is, and a few minutes later he appears in the room. Nana rushes to Belle and asks if he's okay. Katie immediately asks if Michelle is safe. Lorelai replies that everything is now clear, and explains that if Princess Michelle is put into eternal sleep, it will not be her doing, but Katie, who will become her sister's assassin. This was supposed to happen during the uprising at the celebratory ceremony. The protagonist says Belfort kindly provided it to them. The prince adds that since Katie is a mage, she'll understand how the box works. He claims they know their group's plans and that they'll fail. The prince asks her to think about which side to choose, and asks why she is doing all this. Katie despairingly explains that it's all because of her cursed status, which devalued all her attempts to prove her skills. Even after becoming a master, she still received no recognition. The red-haired lady says that despite her title of Archmage, she's still called Princess. She also mentions Michelle, the crown princess, who's neglected by her husband, and asks if they know how imperialists whisper behind their backs. Katie continues that in person, they are respected as great foreign princesses, but in reality, they are considered hostages, and the Archduke promised to achieve their recognition and give them a dignified life. The prince asks in surprise if they really believed Archduke Jan's words. He explains that his father investigated the uprising 15 years ago, and therefore knows who was sacrificed on his estate. His Majesty adds that if Ian truly cared about them, he would not have allowed Michelle to be on the verge of falling into eternal sleep. Hearing this, Katie starts crying and says she can't believe it. The prince comes closer, apologizes, and admits he turned a blind eye to Katie and Michelle's problems. He says he had no idea what they were going through, and promises to right the wrongs of the past if she helps. Edgar, relieved, says that Lorelai's brother is alive and well, and is glad that he managed to save her precious tears. Lorelai thanks him and smiles. Lord asks her to put the jokes aside, and admits that he was genuinely worried about her. He apologizes for not being able to find her brother sooner. The protagonist smiles softly and asks if he could do her a favor if he truly feels sorry. He replies that he will fulfill any of her wishes. Lorelai asks if he'll agree to accompany her to the prince's birthday party if he doesn't have a partner. She believes that appearing as a couple is the best way to avoid suspicion, and she understands that her people won't be suitable. The Lord suddenly hugs her and says that he cannot let her go alone. The next day, Katie approaches Princess Michelle and advises her to always be vigilant. She asks her to never remove the butterfly-shaped hair clip she gave her, as it has a protective spell placed on it. The princess asks if Katie has something similar for her own protection. Katie reassures her, saying it won't be long. Michelle asks her to return quickly, and her sister promises to be there before His Highness's birthday. Michelle asks Katie to be careful, admitting that she is worried about her. The prince explains that Master Katie will simply be going to the Mage Tower with Nana for a while, and notes that her sister's abilities are in no way inferior to Nana's. His Highness turns to his wife, asks her not to worry, and says that she is especially beautiful when she smiles. The prince asks if he should tell them a funny story, and mentions a guy who gets lost and can't say a word when he's around his beloved. Hearing this, Katie asks if it's Duke Fariel. The prince is surprised and asks how she knew. The Archmage says that she also knows that he helped him by creating a special bond between him and the Marquise. The prince asks in surprise if she's clairvoyant. The princess replies that she knew all along about his advances, and her sister adds that any intelligent person would have noticed. Michelle wonders what this connection between the Duke and the Marquise means. The prince explains that this is a group created to maintain their contact. They organize meetings and dates, which has recently led to the two becoming very close. Michelle says it's wonderful and very touching, and her sister wonders if he really thinks so. His Highness admits that their plan is now in jeopardy, because the Duke only has to confess his love, and he has no ideas on how to do this. The princess is surprised and reminds him that his club has knights of the 2nd Battalion who know the Marquise well. She suggests asking them about her preferences. The prince agrees, adding that this way they will also find out her schedule, and with a smile he praises his wife for her intelligence. Michel says that he came up with the idea himself, which means that it is entirely his credit. Katie smiles and notes that, watching their relationship, she is sure that he will protect her sister until the very end, and this brings her relief. It was raining in the evening. The main character, holding an umbrella, asks how long the Duke had been waiting for her. He replies that he arrived only recently, and adds that she looks beautiful as always. The Marquis says that he also looks good today, and suggests that they go. They spend a very pleasant evening. On the way home, the captain apologizes and explains that he didn't expect the horse to suddenly resist. The lady replies that everything is fine and he has nothing to apologize for. Lorelai says she wanted to know where they were headed next. He notices that her outfit is a little dirty and remembers something he's been wanting to ask for a while. The Duke asks if he can order a dress for her. He explains that since they will be attending the ceremony together, he would like to give her a gift. A few minutes later, a lady meets them and says with a smile that she is glad to see them in the stitch salon. The main character apologizes and explains that she doesn't tolerate loud noises well. The woman immediately notices that there's a wound on her graceful neck. The Duke asks Madame not to worry and says that something similar has happened to him before. Madame informs us that His Grace ordered a dress for the lady in advance. He specified that it should not restrict movement and that the design and materials were of the highest quality. Edgar whispers to the Marquise that this dress is designed for an upcoming battle. The lady immediately invites her to try it on. The salon owner notices that the Duke is visibly nervous. He replies that this is not the case at all. The lady laughs, calls him a liar, and points to the book in his hands, turned upside down. She adds that she can tell him how to behave when the Marquise leaves. The salon owner reassures the Duke, saying it won't be a big deal. The saleswoman announces the Marchioness is ready and asks if he likes the result. Edgar politely asks Madame to take everyone out for a moment. The woman explains that the hem of the dress can be easily removed, and the heel will be made wider for stability. Lorelai says that she will most likely pin her hair back, otherwise it will be uncomfortable in battle. The Duke praises her work, takes the Marquise's hand, and kisses it. He says she will shine brighter than anyone else at the ball. Meanwhile, the knights are perplexed as to why they even have to keep an eye on their own captain, especially since everyone knows about Duke Edgar's feelings. The knights of the 2nd Battalion consider the captain superior to anyone else. They worry about what will happen if she marries and has a child, and they worry about the fate of the Red Wolves. One of the soldiers cries out that this is a waste of her beautiful aura. He's sure the Duke won't give up his title, and the captain might regret living away from the battlefield. The knight suggests teaming up and going against the group created by the prince. He says the Duke and Marquise's fan club should be transformed into an anti-club. The knights from the other battalion are surprised to hear about the anti-club and do not understand how they dared to disobey the prince's orders. The soldier explains that they were simply thinking about the future if their captain decided to get married. The knight cries out that they have gone too far with this club and have not even thought about how the wedding could affect the captain's career. At this point, the protagonist overhears the conversation and asks why she should get married at all. She offers to tell her about the wedding, which she herself knows nothing about. The Duke doesn't understand why Captain Lorelai is late and remembers that she has training today. Edgar goes to the training field and, seeing the Marquise with the knight, asks why they are there together. The lady replies that she has something important to discuss and asks if he knew that some of the Blue Falcons carry magical devices. The Marquise adds that some of her knights now use such devices and asks if he knows about it. Edgar apologizes and says he asked His Highness not to allow this. Lorelai asks if this is true. The Duke admits he's had feelings for her for a long time. Lorelai replies that the prince still doesn't trust her and has therefore ordered her to keep an eye on him. He then says they will continue training tomorrow and leaves. Edgar grabs her hand and asks her to wait. He says that if not now, he doesn't know when the chance will come again, and admits that he cares about her. The young gentleman promises to try harder and asks to see him not for his titles, but for the person he really is. The Marquise replies that Sir Pap has nothing to do with magical devices. Edgar says that he has liked her for a long time, and that the prince and his subordinates realized this, which is why they created a love fan club, which is called LGM. Lorelai asks if the sect's expensive, magical devices are connected to any rumors. The young gentleman asks if she will accept his feelings, clarifying that this is not a proposal. The lady says she needs time to think, thanks him, and leaves. Returning to the room, the main character finds herself thinking that she can't stop thinking about how handsome he looked. In the room, the knights meet her and ask if everything is okay with her, because they saw her running away and are worried about this club. Lorelai says everything is fine, and she just had urgent matters to attend to. The knight is relieved and notes that he's glad to hear this, though he doesn't understand why she's so sweaty. The captain says that they should both give up the fan club, but then realizes she said too much and asks if they know about it. The soldier replies that they were hiding nothing. They only recently learned of it, and the prince threatened to strip them of their rank if they refused. The knights beg her to listen, as they did more than simply obey orders. The soldier admits they've become spies and created an anti-club. The lady, surprised, asks what the point is. The knights explain that they want to ruin the idea of bringing her together with the duke, believing that it will harm the captain and be a loss for the empire. One of the men says that no one has the aura like she does, and recalls how amazing she was during training. The knight adds that Duke Edgar could be a good husband, but they are not ready to lose their captain. The Marchioness smiles and says it's a great honor for her. The knights, surprised, ask if she supports the idea of an anti-club. Lorelai remembers that it is time to receive a letter from her other self, and tells the knights that they can go, adding that she did not know about their love of grueling training. Leah from the other world asks how the date went, and is happy that they are having a good time together. The girl writes that their parents proposed marriage, and she wants to believe it will be for love. She recalls that Edgar promised to break off the engagement if she didn't become interested in him after their time together. Leah asks her to remember this after their date. After reading the letter, the protagonist decides she wants to see Edgar. Lorelai runs to the training ground and hugs the Duke. Edgar, surprised, asks what happened. She thanks him and says that, after learning about the parallel world, she envied her other self, because her parents were alive there and she lived like a true duchess. The Marquise admits she considered herself unfortunate, but his investigation changed her perspective. Her parents are gone, but her people are alive, and Princess Michelle and Prince Cain value her as a knight. Lorelai adds that he sees in her neither a warrior nor a naive girl, but the real her, and everything else does not matter. She says that only he saw her true self, surrounded her with care and kindness, but she did not notice it, and apologizes for running away. The main character says that her answer will be positive, and admits that she is also worried about him. Edgar asks her to forgive his harshness, hugs her, and kisses her. He says he'd prefer they call each other something else when they're alone, and suggests calling her Leah. She replies she hasn't heard that name in a while. Edgar asks what she'll call him. She smiles and replies, Eddie. The Marquise calls him Eddie and asks what he will do tomorrow, suggesting that they go out to lunch together. The Duke smiles and says she beat him to the proposal. They say goodbye, and he kisses her again. Edgar says he'll pick her up early. The next day, the main character struggled to choose an outfit for a long time, sorting through dresses, but eventually decided what she would wear. Edgar sees a woman who says she needs to talk to him. At the same time, the main character feels something strange and does not understand what is happening. The lady says they need to find another way, as the chances of success are too slim, and the intelligence could have leaked. She believes it's time to change tactics. Archduke Yan replies that Katie has disappeared, but they are still holding out, and sees no reason to panic, reminding them that they are talking about a revolution. Jan says they have become too complacent, as fear is visible on their faces, and doubts that they are capable of carrying out their plans. The woman replies that they only lost the princess, who was still a hostage, and if the position of head of the Ministry of Magic becomes vacant, another will take it. The man asks what will happen if the plans are revealed, and suggests misinforming the enemy to lure him into a trap. The Archduke reminds them that they have a trump card and orders them not to argue, but to complete their tasks if they want to survive. Ignis says that fear is a natural feeling for the weak. Ian asks where Katie is. Next replies that if she's not found, there's only one place left. The red-haired lady suggests a magical tower, while the fair-haired boy believes the tower may have allied with the crown prince. Ignis asks if he understands who they are, and explains that the mages only help Katie because she is a mage, because to them, everyone is equal before magic. The lady with red hair says that this is the philosophy of the tower, and they would never choose one side. Ignis notices that he has removed his gloves and cries out, reminding him that magic can disappear if two lovers touch each other with bare hands. At that moment, Jan draws his sword and presses it to Nex's neck, reminding him that his patience is not infinite. Ian calls him a non-entity who only got attention because of a drop of magic, and asks if he thought he could get away with anything. The Archduke says he can put him into eternal sleep at any moment. Ignis asks to let her deal with this, and says that Nex is needed alive for now because of his powerful chimera. Jan puts away his sword and orders them to prepare properly this time, otherwise they will lose their heads. Nex thanks Ignis, but she responds by slapping him in the face and telling him to try harder, declaring that she doesn't want to deal with a weakling. The next day, the main character comes to the commander's office and asks if he has a minute. Lorelai says he came yesterday, but she didn't hear, and now she wonders why. Edgar apologizes and says he wasn't feeling well. She asks if he's feeling better. The Lord apologizes again and says that he is busy now, offering to talk later. The main character explains that she received a message about a ready-made dress and wanted to invite him to go out together. The Marquise says that he is being rude because he is busy and decides to go into the salon herself, loudly closing the door. Left alone, Edgar recalls the words that an alliance with the devils is impossible. He recalls his mother's words that the Marquise and her family were enemies and that his father was involved in an accident with a carriage. Edgar can't understand how his father could do such a thing and asks his mother. She replies that she doesn't know the whole truth, but 3 years ago he supported the current Archduke. She recalls how the previous Archduke strengthened the power of the Ministry of Magic and, upon learning that the Marchioness Devil had sided with Prince Cain, plotted to put her into eternal sleep. The mother says that the father knew about this and kept silent, and after the funeral of the Marquise, he renounced the title out of guilt. Edgar cries out that his father should have confessed and answered according to the law, and then asked the Devil family for forgiveness. He remembers Lorelia's words about how she was also worried about him, and he understands how his kindness enveloped her. When the Marquise arrives at the salon, she is greeted by a lady who smiles and apologizes for not being able to greet her properly after the incident at the reception. Hearing this, the main character finds herself feeling déjà vu and pleasant memories. The lady wonders why she's alone. Lorelei explains that Duke Edgar said he was busy. The saleswoman is indignant, considering it rude to send the lady alone. The salon owner apologizes and asks them to wait a bit, as there was another guest before her. Lorelei replies that everything is fine. The lady calls her generous and invites her to look at her new work, assuring her that their salon is the best in the city. The hostess points to the dress and says that if the Milky Way has disappeared, then the reason is in front of her, calling the dress the pinnacle of elegance. The lady adds that they have another 123 new designs, and the Marquise replies that she only wears what her nanny buys for her. The saleswoman informs the madam that the guest has finished trying on the dress and chosen a mysterious outfit that even a goddess of the night dreams of. The lady replies that she is not an assassin, but just an ordinary girl who likes bloody dresses. Hearing this, the main character began to think about how they always come up with such loud names. The saleswoman asks Lorelia if she should bring a mirror. Looking around the room, she notices a lady with red hair and remembers that she's a witch. Ignis smiles and says they seem to have an uninvited guest. The Marquise asks what she's doing here. The red-haired lady sees nothing strange in this and says she simply came to buy a dress. She wonders if runaway witches are banned from salons. Ignis asks why Lorelei is so tense, as if she was the one who put her parents into eternal sleep or something like that. Hearing this, the main character wanted to draw her sword but stopped, realizing that a fight would begin, and innocent people could get hurt. Lorelei says that she won't touch her now, and they'll finish it next time. The red-haired lady asks if she truly believes the Crown Prince will always protect her. Then she reminds her that he failed to save her father and mother and wonders what to say of herself. The Marquise turns to the hostess and asks to leave them alone, explaining that she needs to talk to this girl alone. The lady agrees and suggests that the assistants go with the other girls to buy fabrics. Ignis asks with a smile if her words hurt. Lorelia replies that she is a knight and serves the royal family, and it is her duty to protect the Crown Prince's name and honor. She presses her sword to her neck and says that such insults will be severely punished. The protagonist puts away her sword and says that all this will happen later. She considers her nothing more than a pawn and adds that she has discovered something. Rumors circulate throughout the empire that she is the only daughter and last survivor of the traitorous Portia family, Ignis Portia. Lorelei claims to be an apostate, saved by a magical tower she abandoned for love. Many call her a sorceress in love, and she even likes that image. The main character believes that being a pawn means losing one's own reputation. The red-haired lady asks what about her role. She doubts Lorelei considers herself special because of her knightly title, claiming she's merely the Crown Prince's obedient lapdog. She's respected only for the strength of her aura, and she asks if Lorelei truly thinks she's achieved anything. Ignis screams at her not to delude herself, claiming she's a nobody and couldn't even save her parents. Now she only wanders the world in search of those who put them into eternal slumber. The lady with red hair says that since she couldn't protect anyone, it means she's simply not capable of it. At this point, the Duke appears and sharply tells her to shut her mouth, declaring that Lorelia is not the kind of person about whom such things can be said so easily. The protagonist asks the commander why he came. He replies that he wanted to see her, but they'll talk later, and suggests they prepare for battle. Ignis says she has incredible strength and abilities, but sees no point in them since she's lost everyone she was supposed to protect. She believes they're similar in this regard and uses magic to attack the protagonist. At that moment, Edgar notices that Lorelei isn't even looking at him. He rushes to her defense and takes a magical blow to his arm. The Marchioness, seeing this, asks if everything is all right with his hand. The Duke tells her not to worry, assuring her that he is fine. Ignis suddenly doesn't understand where her power has disappeared to. She tells Lorelei to be better prepared next time, and then disappears. At that moment, Belle enters the room. Upon seeing him, the main character asks, surprised, what he's doing there. He replies that while Nana was healing him, he felt a magical power. Belle asks if it was Ignis, and, understanding the answer, regretfully says that he didn't have time. The Marquise hugs her brother, expresses her joy at seeing him, and asks if he's feeling better. She adds that it's a blessing to know she still has someone to protect. On the way home, the protagonist asks the Duke if his hand is okay and suggests he see a doctor. He replies that Nana's help is sufficient. Lorelai says she doesn't want him to put himself in harm's way for her anymore. Hearing this, the Lord realizes he can't pull away and admits he hates seeing her hurt. Leah replies that it hurts her just as much when Eddie suffers. Edgar offers to promise she won't get hurt again and says he should have gone straight to the salon with her. She asks him to calm down, reminding him that he did come, and they hug. The Duke apologizes for missing their date and for letting her go alone. He apologizes again and admits that he doesn't understand why he has so many reasons to apologize. Lorelai reassures him and says everything is fine. She reminds him that he said he wasn't feeling well and adds that she's willing to wait if he needs to explain everything. Edgar replies that he will tell everything as soon as he gathers up the courage and asks to be patient a little longer. Meanwhile, Ignis is furiously smashing dishes around the room. Nex notices blood on her hand and reaches for it. The red-haired lady screams, reminding him that she already told him to be careful with his touch. She blames him for everything and says he doesn't do anything right except confess his love. Nex says they can't just leave and suggests they stop seeking revenge and go back to the simple life he wants. Ignis screams, asking if he's ready to surrender. She says everything has been taken from her and doesn't understand how anyone could simply give up on revenge. Ignis grabs the boy's hand and declares that she refuses him. He notices that her strength doesn't weaken even when he touches her, and then she says she doesn't love him anymore. At that moment, Nex remembers their first meeting, when the other mages mocked him for his creations. Then a lady in a red dress with red hair appeared and saved him with the help of magic. The mages who had mocked him felt bitterness and, upon seeing Ignis, cried out that her entire family had been plunged into eternal sleep and that she had survived only thanks to the tower. One of them said that she was enjoying life in the tower and asked if her father had slipped poison to the Archduke and Crown Prince, adding that she should be glad that she had not been sent into eternal sleep with her family. The guy called her an assassin, accused her with his eyes, and declared that he didn't want to be in the same room with her, leaving with the thought that she had ruined the whole mood. Ignis picked up Nex's creation and said he must protect her because she was dear to him. She added that it was better to send such people into eternal sleep than to give them what was dear to you. Nex falls to his knees, screaming that it's his fault and begging for forgiveness. He promises to make things right and begs her not to go and leave him. The lady with red hair says that he is not guilty of anything, it's just that in her heart now there is nothing but revenge. The next day, the prince says this is his best guess about the Archduke's allies, and that they are more numerous than he expected. He then asks about their fighting strength. The Lord replies that they can mobilize all the knights, even though there are few of them. The Marquise says that if the guards are sharply increased on the appointed day, the Archduke might become suspicious. Therefore, the reinvestigation team will operate undercover and be in the vanguard. The prince praises their work, notes that time is short, and urges caution. He reiterates that they will engage only after the enemy stirs, and there is a clear reason to intervene, as the uprising must begin. Belford approaches His Highness and says something is troubling him. He asks if it's true that the previous Archduke was poisoned by Viscount Portia, and he doesn't understand how Archduke Jean could have allied himself with Ignis. The young man says that they have a common enemy because the royal family plunged the Portia clan into eternal sleep, and the Archduke seeks to regain power. The prince replies that they couldn't find better allies, but still doesn't consider their support a lasting alliance due to the many unknowns. His Majesty reveals that on his birthday 15 years ago, the previous Archduke personally prepared the poison that was later used to poison him. Father Jin said that a couple of drops were enough to send the Crown Prince into eternal sleep at night, so it was important not to overdo it, so as not to arouse suspicion. Those who learned of the plot were little Lorelai, who hid nearby, and little Edgar, who helped her escape. Edgar didn't know she was the Marquis's daughter at the time, and he asked if they could escape, suggesting they run quickly. They ran out onto the balcony and slammed the door. The men in the room noticed the children's escape, but not finding the key, decided to break down the door. A little boy suggested climbing down a tree, but a young lady took out an arrow umbrella and said that with it the descent would be both safe and exciting. She explained that it was a reliable assistant for tree climbers and added that it was her brother Belle's invention. The girl placed the device on the boy's head, and he protested that now was not the time for toys. She asked him to just trust her, promising to explain everything later. The men burst into the room, and the bearded man invited the children to come with him, assuring them that nothing would happen to them. At this point, the boys were standing on the railings. Edgar suggested closing their eyes if they were scared and jumping. The escape failed. The bearded man caught them and tied them up in the room. The Count said that he knew of Belfort's natural affinity for magic, and that was why he was able to create such devices. The assistant asked what to do with the children. The Count replied that everything would be over after the showdown with Cain, and that there was no point in putting them into eternal sleep, as they would be useful to his son Jean. The Count ordered that magicians be invited to erase the children's memories, and ordered that they be kept under surveillance as it was time for them to go to the banquet. Portia approached His Highness and congratulated him and his son. The emperor asked if everything was all right and was told that, thanks to him, things were going well. His Highness said he was glad to see him. Portia remarked that the crown prince's birthday was something he couldn't miss and presented him with a rare oriental drink. The little prince asked if they were talking about him. The man confirmed and said there was only enough drink for His Highness, pouring it into the emperor's glass. His Majesty joked that he was jealous, but since the holiday was not his, he would endure it. The man offered the little prince a drink and smiled. The prince took the glass and told his father that he wanted to share it with Genie. Hearing this, Portia hugged his son and said that everything was fine, because the gift was intended for His Highness. The prince remarked that the treat tasted better when shared. The man countered, saying the drink had been specially prepared, and giving it away would be disregarding the giver's feelings. He promised to make one for the genie next time. His Majesty agreed and reminded them not to forget about it. As the prince raised the glass to his lips, a cry of poison was heard. Edgar burst in and warned His Highness that the drink was poisoned, urging him not to drink it. A few minutes ago, the children were sitting tied up. The boy asked if everything was okay, and the girl admitted she was scared. He reassured her, telling her that they would only have their memories erased. Edgar said that Prince Cain was in greater danger than they were, and they needed to escape quickly to warn him. The girl said they could then be put into eternal sleep. The boy replied that it was the duty of subjects to protect the royal family, and that Cain was like a brother to him. Edgar reminded her that she had a brother, and asked her to help him free himself, assuring her that she would find something to cut the ropes with. The girl asked him to turn around and said that her father, the battalion commander, taught her to stand up for herself. Lorelei said that he showed her a trick, and luckily she remembered it, managing to untie the rope with her teeth. Seeing this, the little gentleman said with admiration that she was amazing. They approached the door, but it was locked. The girl remembered the ring that could open any lock if the child was accidentally locked out. The plan didn't work, and the door wouldn't budge. Then the boy remembered his father's words, and grabbing the vase, smashed the lock, rejoicing in his success. Edgar ran out of the room, promised to see her later, and thanked her. The boy said that he had heard the conversation, and that the drink was poisoned. And if His Highness drank it, he would fall into eternal sleep that night. At that moment, Portia realized that if things continued like this, he would be discovered, the plot would become known, and his family and Jean would face execution. He thought that if he drank the poison himself, he could avoid the fate of a traitor. Portia told his son that he must continue the royal dynasty. The emperor asked the Viscount if this was true. He replied that he wouldn't dare do such a thing. The Viscount's little son said it wasn't his idea, but at that moment his father fell to the floor. Shouts of demand for His Majesty's protection were heard in the hall. The prince said that Portia's bottle and the former Archduke's glass contained the same poison. His father knew about the plot, but since the Archduke was already plunged into eternal sleep, others would have to answer. The king settled the matter by executing Viscount Portia and his entire family, with only Ignis surviving. Belle believes that children are following in their parents' footsteps. His Highness says he will seize the opportunity to eliminate the root of the problem, and the rebellion must begin so they can stop it and expose the ringleaders. Belfort says things weren't quite as they say, and he didn't know Leah was there. The girl replies that it's unpleasant for her to remember, which is why she kept quiet. Lorelia says that Edgar was very young then, and she still doesn't understand where he got so much courage from. The prince admits that he's only alive thanks to Edgar, and embraces him. Hearing this, Edgar replies that there's a new person by his side now, and asks him to leave him alone. Belfort is surprised and asks if he's dating anyone. Then he remarks that the rumors were true, and Edgar does indeed have a girlfriend. The prince asks if Belfort knew anything about this. He replies no, and in turn asks if they've finally found their chosen one, after which he offers his congratulations. The magician says that whoever this girl is, she's very lucky to have such a wonderful groom. He's sure she's worthy, since Edgar chose her, and then cautiously mentions the strange rumors about him and Leah. The prince confirms the rumors are true, as Edgar's fiancée is Captain Lorelei. He notes that it seems his sister forgot to tell Belfort that they are indeed together. Belfort can't believe this is possible, between the Duke and the Marchioness. He recalls Lorelei's words about her hatred of Edgar because of his mockery. Lorelei explains that she misunderstood everything back then. Her brother admits that the news took him by surprise. The prince asks if he doesn't like their Eddie, reminding him that he just called him a fine groom. Belfort replies that he didn't think they were talking about his sister. His Highness clarifies that there has been no talk of marriage yet. Belle is surprised and asks if he's playing with her, but the prince assures her that's not the case. Belfort raises the issue of titles and argues that in the event of marriage, someone will have to give up theirs. He reminds them that the family has endured much for the title, but understands that Edgar cannot give up the duchy either. Belfort adds that he is a mage and cannot have heirs, which means that if his sister loses her title, their family line will be interrupted. At this point, the Lord interrupts him and declares that he will take care of it himself, so there is nothing to worry about. The prince immediately stops him and asks him not to promise anything he can't fulfill. He advises Belfort to approach the matter with extreme caution. Lorelei turns to Edgar and asks him to be reasonable. Belfort happily says that this is wonderful, approaches the Lord, and asks if he can call him brother. He agrees, considering Leah's family his own, and the mage adds that he will speak with him separately. Lorelai reminds the Lord that besides her, there's also his mother. At that moment, a servant reports a message from Lady Anna, asking him to come to her estate with Lorelai. A few hours later, they arrive at Anna's. At the table, the hostess asks if the Marquise Vandeville is enjoying the food, and Lorelai replies that it's all very delicious, thinking how she longs to return home. Lorelai asks if she can find out the reason for the invitation. Anna replies that she heard about Lorelai's relationship with her son Edgar and asks directly if it is true. Edgar suggests discussing this in private, but Anna notes that their reactions make everything clear and immediately gets to the main point. Anna says that they are already adults, and this will not end with a simple relationship, which means that we will talk about marriage. She asks if they have decided what to do with the titles, believing that such things need to be thought out in advance. Edgar declares that he will renounce the title because Lorelai is the only heir and cannot do so he will take the decision upon himself. The Lord is confident that his brother Lloyd will cope with the duties of the Duke, and there will be no problems. Lorelai tells Anna that they haven't decided anything yet, and suggests that Edgar talk in private. Anna asks Duke Variel if he is sure of his choice, and he replies that he is serious. Anna smiles and says, "That's good." Her son asks if she has any more questions, but she thinks he's already thought it through, and her words won't change anything. Mom says that the main thing is that she likes Leah, and asks if she can temporarily switch to informal terms as an old friend of her mother. Anna recalls that when Lorelia was born, she and her mother thought they were looking at an angel. The girl disliked jewelry and dresses, and she was so kind that she was afraid to even damage a flower. She says that Lorelai always had a charming smile, and admits that she often envied her mother, dreaming of seeing her as her daughter-in-law. Anna explains that Lorelia's mother always told her to let her daughter find love herself. She shows her the bracelet her mother-in-law gave her, and admits she dreamed of putting it on her future daughter-in-law's wrist, asking if Leah would accept the gift. After dinner, Lorelai thanks Anna for everything she has done, and her mother wishes them a safe journey. Edgar thanks his mother and asks about her intentions. Anna replies that she was sincere, but she is still troubled by the sins of their family. She admits that she thought about separating them, but after seeing his pain, she realized that she couldn't do that and decided to take care of Leah to balance the scale of her sins. Anna says that when the time comes, she will be able to ask forgiveness from the Marquis and Marquise, considering caring for their daughter her atonement. Mom swears on the family's honor to do everything possible to make Lorelai happy, and asks her son if he is ready to do the same. Edgar confidently replies that he will do everything to make her happy. On her way home, Lorelia is suddenly blocked by a stranger. She gets out of the carriage and demands that he stay back. He insists he wasn't acting of his own free will, but was merely following orders. The man falls to his knees and begs for mercy, explaining that Ignis abandoned him when he asked her to give up her revenge, realizing they could not win. Nex says that he only needs Ignis, he wants to get her back, but doesn't know how, and asks the Marquise to help. He admits that if he puts her into eternal sleep, she will take him back, but he doubts that he is capable of this, realizing that he will not be able to defeat her, and again begs for mercy. Nex is sure that Ignis is just being used, and when Lorelai gets to know her better, she will understand that she is just an unfortunate orphan who lost her parents early. He says that Lorelai should understand him, because she herself experienced something similar. Hearing this, Lorelai draws her sword, presses it to his neck, and asks how dare he speak about her parents. The Marquise declares that even if he crawls on his knees to their grave, it will not be enough, grabs him by the throat, and asks how he dared to beg for mercy. Lorelai admits that she would gladly plunge a blade into his throat right now, but she is afraid that too much will change after that. She gets into the carriage and says that they will see each other again that day. The next day, Lorelai tells Edgar everything. Hearing this, he apologizes, realizing he shouldn't have let her go alone. She replies that everything is fine and she managed, remembering how she simply left him lying in the middle of the street. Edgar says he'll walk her home from now on. She replies that there's no need. He insists because he wants it and is happy to have the opportunity to spend more time with her. Lorelai finds a letter from her other self in the box, where she's been cooking for Eddie again. He said he liked everything, and Lorelai doubts he was telling the truth, deciding to find out his preferences. She asks Edgar directly about his favorite food, believing that family peace is at stake. He replies that it's probably Frog's side. Lorelai smiles and calls it stupid. Edgar asks if she knows how they got married in the other world, and wonders if she is curious about it. Lorelai recounts how Eddie fell in love with Leah there, and her parents started talking about marriage. He offered to spend time together, allowing her to leave if feelings didn't develop. She says Eddie was so thoughtful and sweet that she inevitably fell in love with him, just like him. Edgar kisses her, but she gently pushes him away and says that she also has a question. Lorelai asks when he realized he liked her, recalling the investigation she participated in as the captain of the Knights. Edgar admits that at first he didn't pay attention, but during training he realized that he couldn't take his eyes off her. He remembers how she had to report to him, and how difficult it was for him to look her in the eyes, thinking that she hated him. Lorelai exclaims that this is impossible, because she only thought that he treated her badly because of mistrust. Edgar says that's not how it happened, and asks if it's true that the other Leah isn't a knight. She confirms it. He admits that he fell in love during the investigation, working with her as a knight, and does not understand how another he fell in love with his Leah. Lorelai thinks this is an excellent question and says it's worth asking her, promising to tell her the answer. Edgar asks when she developed feelings for him. She smiles and says it's a secret, adding that he's kept many things secret too. Edgar admits that he didn't know that this was possible, and Lorelai replies that no one forced him to tell everything, and then it seemed to them that happiness would last forever. Lorelai writes that her Eddie fell in love during the investigation, admiring how she defeated several knights, and now she understands why other girls were not interesting to him. She asks when her Edgar realized his feelings and asks to tell. Coming out of the bath, Lorelai sees the answer and begins to read. Leah from another world writes that she is glad about their rapprochement, and after the letter, asked her lover about it. Edgar said it happened 15 years ago when he saw Leah rush to save Prince Cain on his birthday. Leah reminds her of the attempted poisoning incident and asks if Lorelai remembers how they ran to the prince and how Edgar opened the door. She remembers how she knocked the glass out of Cain's hands, and Edgar admitted that that was when his feelings appeared, although he hid them, and all this seems terrible to her. Leah admits that she couldn't imagine that the secrets would be revealed after so many years. Lorelai thinks about how different things were for her. The next day, the prince tells the princess it's delicious. She replies that when he feeds her himself, everything tastes even better. His Majesty turns to Michelle, saying that she speaks very sweetly, calling her a sweet little bunny and admitting that she embarrasses him. The prince offers Edgar to try dessert, but he refuses, citing a stomachache. His Majesty does not insist and asks if everything is well with Edgar and Lorelai, congratulating them on the beginning of their relationship. Edgar thanks him and says that he wanted to tell him in person but was busy. The prince replies that an apology is not necessary because they know about the showdown with the red-haired witch, whom Lorelai met after a quarrel when she went to buy a dress. Edgar confirms that this is exactly how it happened, and His Majesty is glad that he managed to come to her aid. Edgar wonders how the prince knows about their quarrel, and he replies that the knights told him. Edgar asks if they're still doing this. The prince hides behind Michelle, and the queen asks the captain to calm down. Lorelai says she asked him to stop, not understanding the point, since they're already together. The prince replies that a relationship isn't the end goal, since they're not married yet. Michelle admits that it was she who proposed the new version of the club, the Duke and Marquise Love Fan Club, as a support group for their marriage, and Duretsky jokes about overtime. Edgar says he would like to marry Lorelai at the first opportunity, but the decision is not up to him alone, and there is a problem between his parents. The prince notices his anxiety, and Edgar asks what they would do if they had a secret that could not be revealed to their beloved. Michelle thinks about it and asks if this is an affair, but Edgar denies it, explaining that the problem is not his, but his friend's. He says that his friend is not to blame for anything, but there is something that is difficult to tell his beloved for fear of hurting her, because he only wants to see her smile. Edgar reasons that by hiding the secret, one can fill one's days with joy and hope for redemption, but thoughts of it will still haunt one. The prince says that the decision is his, but personally he would remain silent, considering the truth to be complex and sometimes necessary for happiness. The princess disagrees, saying that she understands him, but believes that her beloved should be given a chance to cope with this. Michelle is confident that she has the strength to accept the truth, and claims that Captain Edgar can handle it. Edgar objects, reminding him that he was talking about a friend, but at that moment the knight reports an emergency, and that after Archduke Jean's visit, Lorelai was in tears. An hour earlier, Jean came to Lorelai and said that he wanted to tell her something about her parents. The Archduke reveals that the man behind the carriage incident is connected to someone close to her, and Lorelai is surprised to ask who he is talking about and why he is here. Jin says he must first apologize for such a sudden visit. The Marquise replies that an apology is unnecessary and asks him to tell her straight away why he came. The gentleman says he's thought about it for a long time and decided she needs to know the truth. The Marquise calmly asks what it is. The Archduke announces that he wants to tell the story of her parents. He's pondered it for a long time and clarifies that it will be about the former Marchioness's descent into eternal sleep and the true culprit of that tragedy. Jin says whoever was behind the carriage incident is connected to someone close to her. The Marquise asks to skip the arguments and get straight to the point. The Archduke agrees to speak frankly and asks how much she trusts Prince Cain and Captain Edgar. The Marquise reacts sharply and asks what these two have to do with it and why he even mentioned them. Jean replies that he asks out of pity, having heard about her relationship with Duke Edgar. He then asks if she knows that he is the son of her enemy. The protagonist is surprised by what she hears. The Archduke asks if she knew about this, and adds that he thought so. Jean says Duke Edgar's father is to blame for the carriage incident. He asks if she knows who her parents were planning to meet that day. Only one person could have been that close to her father, Edgar's mother, the Dowager Duchess Anna von Fariel. The previous Duke learned of the planned meeting and ordered next to replace the horse with a chimera. The Von Devils were on their way to meet a close friend and suspected nothing. Lady Anna was waiting for them, so they didn't even consider the possibility of danger. Jin says the previous Duke had no personal reasons for doing so, and he was on his side back then. Everyone knew about the dispute between him and Crown Prince Cain over rights. He asks if she understands where he's heading. The Archduke reveals that the previous Duke sought to curry her favor by personally eliminating 2 of Prince Kane's allies. He learned of this after the fact. When Lady Anna learned the truth about the Von Devils' eternal slumber, she forced her husband to renounce his title and took him away to the wilderness. Jeanne says she betrayed her friends for her husband. He had nothing to do with her parents' eternal slumber and was only trying to lure them to his side. He wanted to punish the Duke himself, but his wife got there first. The Archduke comes closer and says that perhaps Captain Edgar knows about everything. Lorelai replies that Edgar is not that kind of person at all. She thanks him for his story and says she will speak with the captain herself, after which she asks his lordship to leave. Jin asks that she be sure to contact him directly and adds that she can contact him at any time if she needs help. After the conversation, the main character runs into her room, grabs the box and reads the letter, which says that thanks to her beloved, her parents were able to survive. Leah, from another world, writes that after their correspondence, she herself became determined to know the truth about that day. She questioned her father, and although he hesitated, he finally told her what happened. The girl writes that her parents were already boarding the carriage when Edgar appeared, and announced that the horse had been switched. He stood up to protect his parents, and when the Chimera attacked, he and his father defeated the beast. Afterwards, Edgar told them the whole truth. His father notified the Archduke of the meeting, who ordered the Von Devils to be put into eternal sleep. Edgar's father couldn't pretend nothing was happening. He knew his son's feelings and decided to prevent his parents from falling into eternal sleep by sending Edgar with a messenger. A lady from another world writes that her parents survived only thanks to their beloved and hopes that this truth will not become a heavy burden for her. The main character approaches the captain, puts her sword to his neck, and offers to spar. While fighting the captain, she thinks about how Edgar's father wasn't the one who initiated it, but he knew about the horse switch, and if he'd warned her in advance, her parents might have survived. A few minutes later, the Duke's sword breaks. He doesn't understand how it happened. Lorelai approaches, apologizes, and asks if he's hurt. The Duke replies that everything is fine and asks what's wrong with her. He says he heard about the Archduke's visit and looked for her, but couldn't find her in the study. Lorelai reflects on how she didn't know he knew. Then she says the Archduke told her something strange. She says she knows how hard it was for him to investigate the carriage case and understands he did it for her. She apologizes for only hearing one side of the story and for overreacting. Lorelai says she knows he couldn't do that, but she wants to get rid of any doubts. She reports that she was told that his father knew about the planned assassination attempt and asks if he himself knew about it. Edgar says he's truly sorry, as he only found out about it recently. He wanted to tell her everything, but he was afraid she'd cry again and leave. The Duke asks if it is not enough, that he has always been on her side and made her happy, and if this is not the best way to atone for his father's guilt. Lorelai says that this line of thinking suits him perfectly and asks if this has reassured him. The Marquise replies that this won't bring her parents back. If he wants to apologize, they should break up right now. She hopes they never meet again. Hearing this, the Duke grabs her by the shoulder and asks her to listen. Seeing her tears, he begs her not to go and not to abandon him. Meanwhile, the birdie sings something to Ignis. She thinks the girl knight is already at her wits' end. The Archduke says it seems she couldn't handle his nobility. Edgar kneels, greets the Marquis, and says he doesn't know if they can hear him. He apologizes for not knowing his father had done such a thing. The Duke says he doesn't absolve himself of guilt and believes he should have been more careful. Perhaps then, the tragedy that took their lives and caused Lorelai so much pain could have been prevented. Edgar says his words won't change anything, but he had to apologize. He says he's truly sorry. Lorelai approaches the captain and asks how he dared to come here. Belle tells his sister that he came to see their parents. The Duke replies that he understands how reckless he was and admits that he shouldn't have come for his own relief. He apologizes. Lorelai says that he was the one who shouldn't have done it and hopes that they never meet again. The Marquise leaves and tells him to take care of himself. He asks her to do the same and watches her go. Belle thinks she was too harsh and offers to say hello to her parents. He doesn't understand why they fought and thinks she still loves him. Lorelai cries and says she doesn't love him, but she did. It's all in the past, and she bears the blame for her parents' eternal slumber. The brother lays down flowers and says that he was the one who didn't understand anything. Lorelai says Edgar is the son of the man responsible for putting their parents into eternal sleep. She doesn't understand why things turned out this way, and screams that these people shouldn't be happy. Belfort replies that by saying such words, she's dooming herself. He's certain her parents wouldn't want their daughter to choose revenge over happiness. Her brother says her mom and dad always taught her not to do anything she didn't want to do. He believes they were all victims, and it's not her fault or Edgar's. Belle asks who tried the hardest to make her happy and wonders if she'll change her mind. Lorelai replies that she never will, because she no longer loves Edgar. The next day, the knights complain about the cold and joke that the wind could cut bread. The atmosphere among the captains resembles a northern cyclone. The youngest members of the fan club believe things can't go on as they are. If they help, perhaps Prince Kane will grant them an extra vacation. The Duke looks at the smiling knights and feels a bad premonition. The knights approach the captain and say they have something they want to discuss. Crown Prince Kane's birthday is approaching, and relations between the battalions remain tense, so they propose joint training. The Marquise replies that such a training session is already scheduled for next week. But if they can't wait, she's ready to conduct a special session right now. Arriving at the site, Lorelai smells a sweet aroma and wonders where it comes from. She notices the cake and asks who forgot it. In the distance, she sees a trail of cake pieces leading to the door. The Duke notices a sweet smell, and the knight asks with a smile if this aroma can bewitch him. The Viscount asks the knights what they're doing and what they're hoping for. He wonders if they still haven't figured out who they're dealing with. They reply that they're already in despair and would rather die than take a vacation. A man turns to Vice Captain Deacon and asks him to share his wisdom, since he is the only family man. The Viscount says that if a couple argues a lot, spending time together will help them discuss everything and make peace. The knights reply that even if the captain finishes them off, it is too late to retreat. The Marquise comes up and says that she has long understood what they are trying to achieve, but cannot understand why. The knights reply that, essentially, they're just angering the captain. When they were discussing the plan, they knew she'd ask about this. One of them says she must have guessed about the attempt to arrange a meeting with Edgar. If they even noticed how they distanced themselves, the rest of the knights must have realized it. He adds that she's been looking exhausted lately. They're unsure if they've understood correctly and suggest trying to talk to Edgar. The knight says that if she gets into the carriage, she will definitely meet him and asks if she misses him. Lorelai, getting into the carriage, thanks them for their concern. The knights smile, glad that at least they weren't beaten. The heroine thinks they're scoundrels, but they're right. She needs to talk to Edgar, although she doesn't know where to start, and decides to take things one step at a time. Lorelai doesn't think she needs to deal with this or forgive him. She doesn't know what to do, despises herself for loving him, and doesn't want to love Edgar anymore. Seeing the Duke, she asks how long he's known about his father's actions. He replies no, saying that his father wrote a letter to his mother after learning of their relationship. Edgar says he didn't lie to her. Lorelai replies that Archduke Jean told her how Lady Anna took her husband away to avoid punishment. The Duke explains that his father then said he was renouncing the title due to illness. He and his mother believed him and didn't ask questions, not knowing the truth. Edgar admits it sounds like an excuse, but he and his mother were being sincere at the time. Lorelai asks if this means he will bring his father to justice, since there is evidence and confessions. The Duke is silent, surprised by the question. Lorelai says she knew it and asks him to stay away from her. She thinks to herself that she's too tired, knows she should hold on but can't, and asks him to help her. At this moment, Mr. Ordo runs up to the carriage and informs the captain that Prince Cain has unexpectedly ordered that they be taken immediately to his office. The prince reports what they've discovered and announces that there will be no uprising at the festival. The Duke clarifies whether the rumors of a planned rebellion are true. The protagonist says she'll contact Leah from another world. Edgar suggests choosing one of the Archduke's allies invited to the celebration and questioning him directly. The Duke asks if Leah has a guest list and suggests setting up a personal meeting, as they are running out of time. His Highness says that he would prefer to continue preparations according to the plan already outlined. Leah asks what will happen if nothing happens. The prince replies that such thoughts are precisely what lead to disaster and the plunging of many people into eternal sleep. Therefore, they must act according to plan and keep this information secret. The prince reminds him that there are 2 days left until his birthday and asks how the knights' training is progressing. Lorelai replies that during training, they're constantly reminded of strategies so everyone is prepared for battle. According to information from another world, the Archduke will be with the red-haired girl, and the attack will begin after the first dance. The Marquise says that, as planned, she and Captain Edgar will dance in the center of the hall and, at the same time, guard His Highness. Hearing this, the prince approves of the plan and asks them to continue in the same spirit. He's glad everything is going well and suggests they try dancing before the ball. The Marquise agrees and explains that they mustn't arouse suspicion, so a rehearsal is necessary. She asks if the captain agrees. The Duke replies that he will gladly dance if she wants it. They arrive at the training grounds, and the Duke remarks that there is no better place to go now, so this is a suitable option. The Marquis says 2 knights can practice here quite well. Without music, they simply need to feel each other's movements. Edgar asks if he can invite Captain Lorelai, offers her his hand, and they begin to dance. At this moment, the heroine remembers that she swore to keep her distance, but under the guise of training, she still gets closer to him. After a few minutes, Lorelai says that's enough. There's still time before the party, and she asks him to take care of himself, saying they'll see each other again. On the day of the celebration, the main character puts on her most beautiful dress and comes to the ball. The Viscount asks the captain if he should go downstairs, as Lady Lorelai has been announced. The Duke replies that he should remain focused on his duties and inquires why he's sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. The knight says it's also his responsibility to keep an eye on the second captain. He adds that she'll probably be wearing something bright, like last year, and he'll notice her right away. The Duke points to the lady and says she's right in front of them. The Viscount replies that he doesn't see the captain. Edgar exclaims that he should just look at the most beautiful girl in the room and asks if he sees Lorelai. Hearing this, the main character thinks that now is not the time for jokes. The butler announces the arrival of Archduke Jean Rylan and Baron Emmer's beautiful daughter. Lorelai thinks that she has never heard of such a baron and is surprised that the Archduke did not come alone. She looks at the lady and notices her red hair, not understanding where the feeling of déjà vu came from. Lorelai recalls that according to the letter, it is after the first dance that Ignis should take on her true form, and the battle will begin. Suddenly, Ignis pours a glass of red liquid on her and asks if she is okay. The red-haired lady apologizes for ruining her dress and says she has a magical item that easily removes stains. She asks to borrow it. Lorelai looks at the dress and remembers that it was Ignis who bought it from the salon during their last meeting. The Duke approaches them and says that, unfortunately, Lorelai has to leave, and they will have to miss the first dance. Edgar asks if she's okay. She replies that one glass of wine clearly isn't enough to knock her out. The Emperor addresses the guests, thanks everyone for their presence, and says he is delighted to see so many people gathered to celebrate the prince's anniversary. He is confident that he will be able to lead the empire into the future. The Emperor announces that the festival will open with a peace dance by the Council of 12 and invites everyone to eat, drink, and be merry. Edgar and Lorelai begin to dance, and during the dance, she says that she thinks the girl with the Archduke is Ignis. The Duke quietly says that after the dance, he will take over the protection of the king and prince and asks her to keep an eye on the other two. Lorelai replies that she understands. Edgar warns her to be careful. At that moment, Lorelai feels a surge of magic and realizes it's all over. Suddenly, she realizes the spell was cast by someone else. Baron Emer's daughter is not Ignis. The real Ignis is the maid from the balcony, also with red hair. The Duke notices Ignis and, turning to His Highness, shouts at him to leave immediately. The Viscount says the captain has no weapons. Lorelai realizes she didn't even have time to breathe before her body lunged forward. She runs to protect Edgar, thinking she'd rather fall into eternal sleep herself than let him do so. Lorelai realizes she can no longer hide the truth about them both. She has fallen in love with her enemy, and her enemy has fallen in love with her. She remembers how they ate together, chose clothes, and worked out. He was a part of her life through every moment they shared. Lorelai finally realizes it's love. She doesn't remember exactly when it all began, but now she knows for sure that she loves him. The Duke says that the stronger the feeling, the harder the separation. He promises to protect her, even at the cost of his own life, and admits that he cannot live without her. The Marquis rushes to His Highness and protects him from the mages. The prince says he and the princess are fine, but he worries about Edgar. Lorelai replies that His Highness's safety is paramount, and she's sure Captain Edgar would agree. She asks if the knights are ready for battle. The Marquis says they need to hold out until reinforcements arrive. The prince thanks the heavens that the Emperor managed to leave, otherwise he would not have been able to bear the sight of so many traitors among the nobles. Kane orders Lord Ordo to take Michelle to the garden on signal. He believes there's no time to waste, and assumes his father is already preparing to retreat to safety. He himself remains behind to buy time. Ordo objects, saying it's his duty to protect the prince. Kane replies that it's not an order, but a request. Michelle persuades Ordo to leave so they can truly help Kane. Michelle asks His Highness not to fall into eternal sleep. The prince says there is no time and promises they will meet when everyone is safe. The princess asks him to take care of himself. An exhausted Lorelai says the prince should have left with them. Kane replies that this is his fight and he must see it through. A few minutes later, the battle begins. One of the knights shouts that they will hold off the bandits and suggests that the captain deal with the mage. The Archduke attacks the prince and shouts that he has always been disgusted that such a mediocrity would lead the empire. The prince replies that there is nothing to be done because he will not allow a heartless monster like Genie to take his place. Ignis attacks Lorelai and asks why she's angry. She claims she managed to put her enemy into eternal sleep after all. The Marquis replies that Ignis is taking a great risk by saying such a thing. Ignis grins and says he could say the same. At that moment, Lorelai doesn't understand why. When thinking about her final moments, she only remembers Eddie. She regrets not having loved him even more and not having forgiven him sooner. Suddenly, Edgar apologizes for being late, takes up his sword, and enters the fight. A chimera wounds Lord Ordo, who was protecting the princess. He thinks this is the end, as no one will help. Michelle desperately calls for help. The Emperor, seeing this, shouts for the princess to be saved. Belle suddenly appears and asks if she's all right. Katie asks if they are too late and explains that she convinced the tower mages to come with her. Belford asks about his sister. Michelle replies that everything was fine during the escape, but Captain Edgar fell into an eternal sleep. Seeing Edgar alive, Lorelai is filled with joy, and her strength returns to her. The prince says he is glad to see them reunited, but suggests they first settle the remaining matters, as the forces of the parties are equal. Ignis says there are more enemies. Jin replies that he doesn't care, the goals haven't changed, and they must put everyone into eternal sleep. Lorelai tells Edgar she'll take Ignis and provide cover. He replies that he'll handle Nex, and the battle continues. Jin orders Nex to attack the prince, but Edgar blocks his path, suggesting that they deal with him first. Seeing this, Ignis calls him a fool. The Marquise asks if she doesn't think now is the time to be distracted. Lorelia quickly dispatches Ignis with powerful magic and says that this was the last time she would spare an enemy. Suddenly, the Chimera attacks Lorelai, but she plunges her into eternal sleep. Edgar asks if she's all right. Lorelai replies yes and asks about him. The Duke notes that the Chimeras have grown stronger, and now a precise strike to the weak spot is needed. He says he'll distract them while she hits the target. Lorelai replies that she understands. Belford yells at his sister to aim for the red part on the Chimera. Ignis lunges at Lorelai again, demanding she stay out of her way. At that moment, Belle yells at her to hit her where she's weakest. The prince confronts the genie and asks if it was worth it to go so far. He suggests looking around, saying the hall should have been filled with laughter, but instead, it's awash in blood due to his lust for power. The genie screams that this is precisely why the prince is unworthy of the throne, because such sacrifices, in his opinion, are necessary for a great purpose. Hearing this, the prince strikes and asks if these people agreed to sacrifice themselves. He says that the genie's greed only leads to a senseless descent into eternal sleep. Nex sits next to Ignis and cries, begging her not to leave him. Some see them as unfortunate mages who chose love. Ignis calls him a fool, touches his face, and falls into eternal sleep. His Highness tells the Archduke that it's all over. Jin screams that this can't be and asks how he's any worse, claiming that those like the prince are unworthy of the throne. Jin feels a surge of magic. Katie says it can't end like this. The Archduke screams that he'll break the glass and deal with everyone. The prince stops him and says it's truly over. After a difficult evening, Lorelei writes a letter to Leah and thanks her for the warning that helped save many lives. Everyone was evacuated before the chimeras arrived, and no one was hurt. Princess Michelle looks happier than she has in years, not only because she is safe, but also because she is now confident in her place in the royal family. Vel looks grim. To secure the mages' support, he agreed to make some improved mailboxes, and Lorelia thinks he's stuck in the tower for a long time. Edgar approaches Commander Lorelia and asks if she is feeling better. The Marquise looks at his wounded arm and asks if he hadn't promised never to hurt himself again for her. She says he didn't even have a sword and was almost lost in eternal sleep. The Duke replies that he's fine thanks to Belle's magical trinket. He smiles and asks her not to cry. The young gentleman apologizes, considering himself at fault. The Marquise asks if his apology is sincere. He replies that it comes from the heart. Lorelei says she accepts the apology, not just for today, but for everything. She wipes away tears. She admits that when she thought she had lost him, she finally realized how much she loved him. Lorelei comes over and hugs him. She asks if he understands what her forgiveness means, and says she knows he'll be the one who takes care of her for the rest of her life. So she forgives him, Commander. Hearing this, the Duke is genuinely happy and hugs her tighter. The Marquise says she has fallen in love with her enemy. The next day, Anna approaches the Marchioness von Devil and Lord Belfort and asks for forgiveness. She says she wanted to keep the secret for their happiness and to protect them from the past. Anna admits that she had no idea what this would lead to and sincerely regrets what happened. Edgar's father says he is ashamed to apologize in this way, but he understands that he has no other choice. Lorelei looks at her brother and tells Anna that she understands her situation. She says she has loved her like a mother since childhood and is ready to forgive her, but not the Duke.